with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, May 11th, 2023. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Corban Addison, author of Wastelands, the true story of farm country on trial. Meanwhile, CNN's town hall was predictably lie-filled. Embarrassing for the network. Total disaster. More on that in a bit. George Santos pleads not guilty to 13 counts. Guess we have to take him at his word. Not actually. Whatever is left of Dianne Feinstein returned to the Senate yesterday.
Oh boy.
I'm not trying to be glib, but man, it was not a pretty sight.
We're not the ones being glib, it's her staff and the party.
Exactly. I mean, nearly 3-month absence. She showed up, did not look great. Chuck Schumer walked in with her. Don't understand the desire to make this a photo op, but anyway, she was not present for the first Judiciary Committee vote this morning. And more information about her condition continues to trickle out. She allegedly confused Tim Scott for Raphael Warnock.
Yeah, she's about to break out like Wiggins in the playoffs.
Any day now. The COVID emergency and thus Title 42 expires tonight. Expect a temporary migrant surge and a right-wing freakout. Texas law enforcement promises to increase its brutality on that front under Operation Lone Star. Democrat Veronica Escobar in the House proposes ending sanctions to Venezuela and Cuba to, quote, stop the surge in migration. Or at least that's how the Washington Post quoted it. Hey, bad reasoning, but I will take it. Dozens of Palestinians killed in Israeli strikes in the last 2 days, including children. And Kevin McCarthy blocked Rashida Tlaib from recognizing Palestinian displacement yesterday in Congress. Bernie Sanders, the mensch that he is, hosted her in the Senate instead. The EPA announces regulations on greenhouse gas emissions from power plants. FDA shies away from over-the-counter birth control pills. Missouri is the latest state to ban transition care for minors. Daniel Perry, the man who killed BLM protester Garrett Foster, sentenced to 25 years. Greg Abbott still wants to pardon him. And lastly, Amazon gets $1 billion in tax breaks from Oregon for locating their data centers there. You know, good for them. They need it. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the show, everybody.
You know what, just on that data centers and sort of state subsidy thing, the CHIPS Act, Intel has got a lot of money for the CHIPS Act.
Interesting.
And it's interesting watching, because I'm maybe looking in the next year or so upgrading my PC. And so I'm back on the computer CPU YouTubes. Mm-hmm. And even like on there, they're talking about like, yeah, Intel's basically trying to wait for long enough to where they can have accepted that CHIPS money, but also then fire a lot of people. So it's just like, man.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's a note that when you give corporate subsidies with no strings attached, that's what you get, right?
It's unbelievable.
And by the way, good job, everybody that, and I say this sarcastically, that was crapping on AOC for saying that we should not have the Amazon headquarters here, or if we were going to have it, we should not give them tax breaks. because they ended up building a smaller facility here anyway, and they just wanted to gouge whatever state that they could and hold their like massive economic power hostage, and she was proven immensely right.
Yeah, absolutely. There's certainly like dark days with regards to like the squad's relation to labor, like with the rail thing, but that was a big stand, and it was educational because that was a big con on the American people. It was Amazon basically getting free info on the infrastructure of any American city that had any kind of capacity, and then saying like, oh, okay, we're going to go with where we want to go.
Yeah. I remember some family conversations, spirited ones, that, I'm still waiting on that call from them that I was right in that situation, but, never gonna happen. It just speaks to my personal psychological issues. Anyway, let's talk about, speaking of personal psychological issues, they were on full display last night with Donald Trump. We're gonna spend a good amount of time before we get to our guest here, Corban Addison, speaking about the unmitigated disaster that was the CNN Trump Town Hall last night.
Trump Hall.
It's it, yeah.
Welcome to Trump Hall.
It's Trump Town and Trump Hall. I am the mayor. Excuse me. So here's an ancient history lesson. In 2016, after the network CNN continued to run Trump rallies and his empty podium uninterrupted, waiting with bated breath for the next crazy thing that he was going to say, not covering Bernie Sanders rallies, for example, but covering anything that Trump did, any event that he held, with completely breathlessly. Jeff Zucker, who was the head of CNN at the time, admitted that it was a, quote, mistake to have the coverage constructed in the way that they did.
Yeah, because he wants to get invited to parties.
Right. Well, and in 2016, that's what he had to say to get invited to parties. Right. And they were just allowing him to spew whatever lies he wanted via their network by just airing his rallies without...
was that presidential?
Exactly. And Zucker's no longer at the network 6-7 years later after he made that statement. Now it's Chris Licht, formerly of the Stephen Colbert CBS show. He is repeating Zucker's mistake so brazenly that it has to be deliberate, frankly. And there's been a lot of talk and rumors about CNN pushing itself towards the right deliberately. Now, I don't think Don Lemon is left-wing, but that was what he stated was part of the reason for his firing. And I do see that there's enough smoke out there from people who've left the network who are more critical of Trump. Harwood, Brian Stelter, who had some interesting intel from the meeting after this town hall, which we'll get to in a bit. But that this is a deliberate rightward shift for the network, that they're attempting to take a slice of the Fox News pie. So I'm starting to believe that where there's smoke, there's fire, and this is one of their latest moves in that vein. Now, a lot of people at CNN are not happy about this. They were sending out anonymous quotes to the media, to Justin Baragona of the Daily Beast, to the Washington Post media reporters, calling it awful, we're going to get crushed, a disaster. But this is coming from the top, clearly. And we're going to play a bunch of clips from this here. But I'll just say, Caitlin Collins, I think, did very poorly. She started off better with the election lies. But, she is a Daily Caller reporter. That's how she got her start, ranking the hotness of Syrian refugees for Tucker Carlson's website. That should be instructive, that they're trying to platform a clearly conservative-leaning reporter in this area.
And she's most likely going to get the primetime evening slot.
Exactly.
Next,
so this is, again, another
Grooming.
piece of evidence here.
Grooming that word has gotten a new connotation now, but they're...
like the original version of grooming.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
For a plum position.
Yeah, exactly. And you always do it with somebody that you know is on your side, and then you make them look like something semi-respectable.
Exactly. And cable news has done this for a long time. I mean, even
always from the right.
Always from the right. MSNBC people hiring Republicans that are just mildly critical of Trump, and that's all you need. But even that for CNN, they feel that like they need to get some of the Trump audience back, and maybe they took a step forward last night. Because as much as I have problems with the meteoric rise of Caitlin Collins to this kind of position, it's more the format, frankly, that I have a problem with. You'll see this. The town hall format is like a get-to-know-you humanization format where it's typically done by these outlets in primaries, meaning the audience is fully whatever the side is, Republican or Democrat. And you will see that the audience just laughs and cheers on Trump. And that has the effect of portraying to the people watching it that he has popular support behind those lies.
Yeah, and CNN's aware that the audience is part of the product here. And it's not just an accident. It's you do this and it is stated this way. You haven't seated it half with people who are very upset about, like, say, January 6th, for instance. Speaking
of January 6th, that was part of the discussion last night. Here is the first clip we'll play for you. Trump was asked, this is at the start of the town hall, where Caitlin Collins was a little more aggressive about the election lies. And this was just a part of the many lies that he told last night.
President Trump, thank you for your time here tonight. We got a great crowd here in New Hampshire, a lot of voters with a lot of questions about what your 2024 term would look like, what another Trump term would look like. We'll get to the voters shortly, but your polls show that you are dominating the Republican race right now, but you are also under active federal investigation for trying to overturn the 2020 election results. Your first term ended with a deadly riot at the Capitol, and you still have not publicly acknowledged the 2020 election results. Why should Americans put you back in the White House?
Because we did fantastically. We got 12 million more votes than we had in, as you know, in 2016. I actually say we did far better in that election. Got the most that anybody's ever gotten.
But not the majority or the Electoral College.
This isn't like in Mario Kart where you run against your previous best time. You're running against another opponent, and just because you did better than you did last time, he did much better than the person you ran against last time, because in part, like how
everyone
animating
hated
you are.
Yeah, there was low turnout in 2016 because people did not like Hillary Clinton. There was higher turnout in 2020 because people hated you so much.
I beat my ghost. What?
We got 12 million more votes than we had in, as you know, in 2016. I actually say we did far better in that election. Got the most that anybody's ever gotten as a sitting president of the United States. I think that when you look at that result and when you look at what happened during that election, unless you're a very stupid person, you see what happens. A lot of the people in this audience, and maybe a couple that don't, but most people understand what happened. That was a rigged election, and it's a shame that we had to go through it. It's very bad for our country. All over the world, they looked at it, and they saw exactly what everyone else saw. You look, even if you just look recently with the 51 intelligence agents, that made a 16-point difference. If you look at the FBI, and Twitter, they call it Twitter files, made a big difference.
There we go.
If you look at
Mr. President,
Thanks,
to what you just said there, though, it was not a rigged election. It was not a stolen election. You and your supporters lost more than 60 court cases on the election. It's been nearly 2.5 years. Can you publicly acknowledge that you did lose the 2020 election?
Let me just go on. If you look at True the Vote, they found millions of votes on camera, on government cameras, where they were stuffing ballot boxes. So with all of that, I think it's a shame that what happened. I think it's a very sad thing for our country. I think it's a very sad thing, frankly, for the world, because if you look at what's gone to our country has gone to hell. Our borders are bad. Our military has been bad.
Great job by Collins.
You look at the taxes, you look at inflation, what's happened to inflation. It's just destroying our country.
All right, so that was really that's literally the beginning of it.
And just to give you some context, guys, on True the Vote.
I was about to say
True
that,
the Vote, the voter integrity organization, where two of their leaders of that organization were literally put in jail by a federal judge for acting in contempt of court, like in October of last year. So even bringing up True the Vote,
and they just hired
the underpinning of his evidence should tell you something right out the gate.
And they just hired a QAnon influencer to do their radio radio show for True the Vote. So, like, I mean, this is the kind of waters that we're swimming in here. He goes on to like lie about how he tried to get the National Guard on January 6th. There's more where he talks about how it's a beautiful day. But like that original part, the election was really the only part where she even had some meaningful pushback, and then it began to dissolve from there.
That's such a dangerous piece of propaganda there, because all you had, I didn't see much from Collins there at all. The biggest reaction to what Trump was saying was from the audience.
Yes.
And it was affirming what he said.
Saying that, yeah, you do have to be stupid to not believe that the election was rigged.
Which is just like malpractice by Collins and CNN to let that go out.
Well, I mean, and I'll also say that what her focus seemed to be was to pin him down on specific policy proposal that he wants to do, as opposed to in real time, like calling him out on his lies. But at the same time, part of me wants to say we need to have a conversation about not just fact checking, because I think there's a lot of hubris that the media assigns to their role in fact checking. It's about platforming more than anything, and what you choose to focus. It's not the nature of focus on or highlight. It's not the nature of what even you say sometimes in those instances, especially with a serial liar like this guy who has a cult following. It is the act of putting on this program. But they knew that. They knew they would get big ratings here.
The thing is, like, it's the program, and it's like this would have been, I think, worthwhile television if Collins was prepared to stay on that point for the entirety of the thing, if Trump wouldn't relent on that, and actually be a journalist and stand up for the truth on the matter, rather than just let him filibuster. And but instead they have business to get to. We need to talk about all this other stuff. We need to talk to Trump about. We got all these other subjects in the clips.
And later on, about the election stuff, he literally says to her, like, I actually don't think you're too smart to actually believe that the election wasn't rigged. But you have an agenda because you work for CNN.
Right.
So it's like all of it comes back to being like, even if you're saying it, you're a liar. I'm not lying, and you're either an idiot or a mark if you are saying what is actually true.
Well, part of what they also wanted to get to, again, at the expense of actually like nailing him on something, is the fact that just days ago he was found liable in a sexual abuse and defamation case. And honestly, the way E. Jean Carroll's lawyer should like bring a second defamation case in this instance, because just within days, this is what Trump is saying about her. And good job, CNN, putting a sexual abuse victim on display here for jeers from a right-wing base.
Usually you leave office, you say, I'm sorry, but I'm going back home. I'm back home to my family and everything. I'm going to be resigning. My poll numbers went up, and they went up with the other fake charge, too. Because what's happening is they're doing this for election interference. This woman, I don't know her. I never met her. I have no idea who she is. I had a picture taken years ago with her and her husband, nice guy, John Johnson. He was a newscaster, a very nice man. She called him an ape. Happens to be African American. Called him an ape. The judge wouldn't allow us to put that in. Her dog or her cat was named Vagina. The judge wouldn't allow to put that in. All of these things. But with her, they could put in anything. Access,
this
Hollywood.
This was a jury of 9 people who found you liable of sexual abuse. Do you think that will deter women from voting for you?
No, I don't think so, because I think the whole thing, just so you understand, ready?
Ready.
I never met this woman. I never saw this woman. This woman said, I met her at the front door of Bergdorf Goodman, which I rarely go into other than for a couple of charities. I met her in the front door.
He doesn't do his own shopping.
She was about 60 years old, and this is like 22, 23 years ago. I met her in the front door of Bergdorf Goodman. I was immediately attracted to her, and she was immediately attracted to me. And we had this great chemistry. We're walking into a crowded department store. We had this great chemistry, and a few minutes later, we end up in a room, a dressing room of Bergdorf Goodman, right near the cash register.
They're
and
laughing.
Then she found out there were locks on the door. So she said, I found one that was open. She found one. She learned this at trial. She found one that was open. What kind of a woman meets somebody and brings them up, and within minutes, you're playing hanky-panky in a dressing room, okay? I don't know if she was married then or not. John Johnson, I feel sorry for you, John Johnson.
Mr. President, can I...
I mean, the laughter in the audience as he victim blames. What kind of woman does this? I don't know, Donald. All the women that you've probably banged.
Great husband.
I mean, literally anybody, dude. Like, this is classic misogyny. I mean, really deeply embedded stuff where these men want to be as sexually promiscuous as they want, but if a woman decides that she wants to engage with him, well, she's a slut. And what kind of woman does that? And in this instance, she was not consenting. She was not consenting in this instance. There's like a clip floating around of Trump, like, in Bergdorf Goodman doing some special for them saying, I come here all the time. Like, it doesn't matter. Just running through these lies here. He calls E. Jean Carroll a whack job later. But again, putting more smears against a victim of sexual abuse on display for the CNN audience. And it just gets worse. Let's do this Roe v. Wade. This was the thing that really bothered me. So I'm like, I'm watching the Knick game in the background, also trying to watch this. I watched a lot of it this morning as well. And this still sticks out to me as the thing that's the most infuriating here because we're getting into policy implications. And this is Trump speaking about abortion, where he lies specifically about the Democratic position with zero pushback from Caitlin Collins, just none.
The way I look, I think it's very important to say this. I consider the other side to be radical because the other side under Roe v. Wade and other things, the other side, they're radical because they will, remember the debate with Hillary Clinton, I said, rip the baby out of the womb at the end of the 9th month. They will kill the baby in the 9th month. If you look at that crazy governor of Virginia from the former governor, where he said, no, the baby will be born, and then we'll decide essentially whether or not to execute the baby.
But, Mr. President, can we talk about what you would do if you are
but these are the radical people.
Re-elected?
It's not the pro-life people that are radical.
But if you are re-elected and you're back in the Oval Office and you get legislation to your desk, would you sign a federal abortion ban into law?
What I'll do is negotiate so that people are happy. But the fact that I was able, I'm so proud of it. We put 3 great justices on the Supreme Court. We have almost 300 federal judges on the Supreme Court.
So just to be clear, Mr. President, you would sign a federal abortion ban into law.
I said this. I want to do what's right, and we're looking, and we want to do what's right for everybody.
But what's right?
But now, for the first time, the people that are pro-life have negotiating capability because you didn't have it before. They could kill the baby in the 9th month or after the baby was born. Now they won't be able to do that.
But I think this is a really important question for you to answer because this is something every Republican, including those who are running against you for the nomination, are being asked about is would you sign a federal abortion ban into law?
And many of them are going to give you the same answer as I am. First of all, I am honored to have done what I did. And a lot of people said in 150 years, he's now the most consequential president because he saved so many lives. And I'm honored to have done it.
Applause. All right, so that's literally the exact issue I had with the way that she conducted this. I mean, it's not an accident that she was chosen for this. But at the same time, they're trying to put women in these positions to pin him down on things like, rape lawsuits and abortion bans. I don't really care what his policy platform position is on abortion because it's just going to be what he decides at the moment and what's the most extreme thing that he can get away with while appealing to his right-wing base and getting it through Congress, if he were to be president, God forbid, getting it through the Senate and the House in terms of an abortion ban. There's no question that given the constituencies that are behind Trump, that they would attempt a federal abortion ban when he was in office because the guy has no principles. It's not about nailing down what he would or wouldn't do because that's incredibly fungible. It's about the lies, about how doctors and Democrats want to execute babies outside of the womb. 90% of abortions happen before that 12-week period. The rest that happen after that are usually soon after that or when the life of the mother is in jeopardy and there are medical issues. That's when the 7, 8, 9-month abortion happens. Like, those are very, very narrow situations, and it's because of medical circumstances. And there's just that's one of the easiest fact checks that you could use in that. Again, I hate the term fact check, but that's one of the easiest layups for her, and she didn't even do that.
But I also think the other thing that makes this to me almost completely valueless is I think we can get to it for a sec. The Chris Licht being like,
yes, let's put that up.
This is valuable because he's the front runner or whatever. It's like, yeah, but he's a front runner who literally he's what he does is he's a gish galloper in the almost like the highest sense of the term, and that he doesn't let you catch your breath to account for the 500 false things that he said. If you actually wanted to do like a comprehensive fact check or whatever, or annotate his remarks, the entire thing, as Matt said, it would take you all day. There's no value to this being an hour of him going through issues and lying about every single thing that he's saying.
Well, there's value from ratings.
That's what it is. That's fundamentally.
Let's pull that
But
up.
I think like, yeah, you're a major network and you should have like the guy on. But like, there's this Ben Rhodes quote, and we'll get this Stelter here. But Ben Rhodes, former Obama, I believe, foreign policy guy.
Yeah.
Most of the outlets are reporting on world events from Washington. The average reporter we talk to is 27 years old, and their only reporting experience consists of being around political campaigns. It's a sea change. They literally know nothing. I looked at Caitlin Collins' Wikipedia to try to figure out
she's 31.
Why a corporation of CNN's caliber would put someone like her in this position, and there's no like real rationale for that besides just like they'd like having somebody like I don't honestly like why. Like, there's nobody in your stable of journalists that can do a better job on this than Collins, because she was not competent here.
No, she wasn't. And I think that the friendly nature of it, the pushback, but within narrow confines, was the point, even though he repeatedly called her nasty. I mean, that's his go-to for any woman that bothers him. But this is what Stelter, who has recently been let go from CNN, as again, part of their clear rightward shift here, says Chris Licht, the new head of CNN, begins CNN's 9 a.m. editorial call by praising Caitlin Collins for her masterful performance last night. He says, quote, "I couldn't be more proud of her and the whole team in New Hampshire." Then he says he's aware of the backlash, more to come. Stelter continues, the quote from Licht here. "You do not have to like the former president's answers, but you can't say that we didn't get them," Licht tells staffers. Who cares about the answers?
On the campaign trail too.
Good, you guys got the lies. Incredible. Many of whom are angry about the town hall. The staffers, as I mentioned, have been upset. Caitlin pressed him again and again and made news. Made a lot of news, and that is our job.
Pressed him, like, be specific. Name a specific time you're proud of.
Yeah, I mean, your job is not to make news. It's about well, I guess, reporting the news. Now you guys are the news that people are reporting on. While we all may have been uncomfortable hearing people clapping, that was also an important part of the story, Licht adds, because those folks represent, quote, a large swath of America, and the media screwed up by missing that part of the story in 2015, 2016.
Oh, fuck off.
Yeah. I mean, and lauding that kind, again, as if Licht has any idea about the kind of America that he's opining about there. Covering Trump is, quote, tricky and messy, Licht says, and it will, quote, continue to be messy and tricky, but it's our job. He confidently says, America was served very well by what we did last night. Many CNN employees strongly disagree.
And the media is complicit in this too. The Hill, Caitlin, all the headlines, or a lot of them, are supportive of Collins, or make it like Trump snaps at CNN's Caitlin Collins. You're a nasty person. New York Times, Caitlin Collins in a white suit takes on Trump.
Oh yeah, we get it. The callback to Hillary.
But that's what it was. But the other stuff of this, all of it, as you say, I mean, Matt, it's all of this it's me. All of it becomes media critique. All of it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We're promoting Caitlin Collins. Let's put her in this position so she debates Trump, and then we tell everyone on staff. We issue a press release. Caitlin Collins did great. Caitlin Collins did great against Trump. Now she's the 9 p.m. anchor. All of this stuff has one way or another a profit motive and a motive to platform to make CNN the news. To not actually report on anything is to make CNN the center of the story, because nothing else in this business is profitable. There's literally zero other profit element besides making the fucking corporation the story.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You're right. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk to Corban Addison. are back, and we are joined now by Corban Addison, best-selling author of Wastelands, the true story of farm country on trial. Corban, thank you so much for coming on today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So, the topic that you cover here, and it really reads almost like a legal thriller. I've seen other people describe it as such, but it's a true story, which is amazing. But it really does hit home for me because back in my old gig when I was, kind of cosplaying as a reporter, it was truly one of the most impactful things I did is, or at least I hope so, was we covered this family in rural Delaware. We did a series of interviews with them, and they were suffering severe health problems, cancer, amputations, hair loss, death prematurely. And it was from Mount Air Farms, which is a major chicken processor. And they were spraying waste everywhere. They got their water from well water. They were a black family that had been there for generations. And they ended up getting a settlement, but it just highlights how widespread this problem is. Rural communities at the front lines of this kind of pollution from meat processing. And you tell this story in depth, and it's a David versus Goliath story with a happy ending, at least in terms of getting a settlement.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's a fascinating story and one that I was not aware of. I mean, it's horrifying. One of the things that was hard about Wastelands is that there were a lot of health effects, for the people living next door to these industrial hog farms, with thousands and thousands of animals cooped up in barns, storing the waste of small cities in a cesspool outside, open to the air, and then spraying it onto nearby fields. But, from a legal standpoint, it's much harder to prove those sorts of health effects when you're dealing with asthma and hypertension and mood disorders and depression and whatnot, than it is to just say, hey, look, they're being a bad neighbor. They're making, life obnoxious for us living next door. And that's ultimately what the lawyers decided to do is to use the 400-year-old concept of nuisance going back to the English common law, which just says, look, you can't unreasonably interfere with your neighbor's use and enjoyment of their property. And that should apply equally to large scale industrial, agricultural and animal operations as much as it does to you and me. So that's where, they brought the claims and they were successful in narrowing it down and focusing it. I appreciate the mention about the way it reads. I mean, certainly I wrote the book with Jonathan Harr as a civil action in both the back of my mind and just over my shoulder on the shelf. That was one of the reasons I went to law school. I read his phenomenal book back in the 90s, the true story about a big environmental litigation. I thought, you know what, if Jonathan Harr can sell a story like this, so can I. And that was my intention. So I'm glad that people have found the book easy to digest and read.
Yeah, I mean, it really is that, as you describe. And it's a story of environmental racism, of monopolies, and of a legal fight as well. But I wanted to rewind before we get to the litigation in and of itself to talk about the history of hog farming in Eastern North Carolina, which you cover and write about, and how it was this tobacco land beforehand, but very quickly became an area of the country where massive meat packing companies made their home to the detriment of the people in the area. If you could just go through the history of that for our audience.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, it's a fascinating story and one that I knew nothing about. I mean, I don't come from a rural part of the country. I come from the megapolis of Southern California. So, going down east, the way they call it locally in North Carolina felt in some ways like traveling to another country. I mean, it truly feels like a world apart. And it is. I mean, it has its own culture. It has its own kind of demographic, and one that maps onto its history quite clearly. So this was for 250 years the world of the Brightleaf Tobacco Belt. So what the economy was, King Tobacco built until the 1950s when tobacco hit an economic slide and a lot of tobacco farmers struggled to make ends meet, and they were looking for a way to keep their family farms. I mean, a lot of them, had been on this land themselves for a long, long time. I mean, we're not talking at this point about just big plantations, but small family farms, and they were struggling economically. So they were looking for a savior. Some sold out, some took government buyouts to stop, producing tobacco. Others looked for some way to diversify, and in stepped a guy named Wendell Murphy. So Wendell came from Rose Hill, a tiny town in eastern North Carolina. He had already built what became the world's largest feed mill. He got into the hog business back when they were just, hogs on the ground, like an old McDonald's farm. And he had a herd that he was feeding with his own, stock, his own feed, until they got cholera. And he actually had to euthanize all of his animals, quarantine the dirt. And it was at that point that he had, a choice. Should he just walk away and focus on the feed mill, or was there some other way to make money off of hogs? And he actually looked to the west toward Don Tyson, who had revolutionized poultry about 10 years before by basically handing out contracts to other farmers to grow Don Tyson's birds. And that's how corporate poultry farming was created. And Wendell Murphy thought, okay, hogs are much bigger animals, but what if we put them indoors, in barns? And what if I handed out contracts to all these tobacco farmers and they could just grow my animals on their land? They've got a ton of, a land that's basically fallow right now, and they're desperate for a way to stay in business. So it seemed like a perfect kind of dovetail. And it was, I mean, in many ways for, the tobacco farmers and Wendell Murphy, it was a marriage of great, joy and convenience. And Wendell Murphy became, a hero in eastern North Carolina to everyone other than one constituency whose, permission was never asked, whose opinion was never asked. And when they chose to volunteer it, they were ignored because of basically who they are. And that is the neighbors of these hog operations, the folks that were living, near the land, in and around the tobacco land, were in many cases the heirs of formerly enslaved peoples. So, mostly Black folks of modest means who have ties to the land going back generations. They just don't have political power and never have in eastern North Carolina or in the state of North Carolina or really across the entire South. And as a result of that, when they complained, and a few of them did, had the temerity to stand up to the Wendell Murphy's juggernaut, they just got ignored. And they got ignored over the course of the next 30 years until the lawyers stepped up and decided to file a lawsuit.
And how much of this, too, was the fact that these hog companies, right, the hog farms, became incredibly industrial monopolies as well, very rapidly. What was that shift like, and how quickly did it become just a handful of mega corporations, including the one that ended up getting sued, Smithfield Foods?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I mean, the 90s was, of course, an era of consolidation across, all sorts of different industries. And so in the 1990s, there was just a series of mergers. I mean, in the early part of the 90s, the 80s and early 90s, there were, in eastern North Carolina, they called them the five families, which of course harkens back to the five families of the New York Mafia. It's fascinating. There were five companies that were owned by families, including Murphy's company, which was by far the largest in eastern North Carolina. But then they started dropping. So, Murphy became, by 1997, when he landed on the cover of Forbes magazine, he was the world's largest, not just America's largest producer of porcine stock. And there were a couple of other smaller companies as well that then were gobbled up. And in 1999, Smithfield Foods, which was Murphy's, basically his mirror on the packing side, the largest packer of pork in the world, Joe Luter bought out Murphy. And I mean, there was a merger, but it basically was a buyout. And Smithfield then became the largest producer and packer of pork in the world. And then it was that way for a while, but Luter was in the same way that, Murphy was. He never saw an opportunity he didn't want to take. He never thought that, the sky was ever the limit. Everything bigger was better. he looked to the final frontier of pork, which is China. China is the world's largest consumer of pork products. And they even have a national pork reserve, like we have a national petroleum reserve. It's a big security issue, food security issue for China. And Luder had a counterpart over there by the name of Wan Long, who ran a company called Shuangwei, which controlled China's national pork reserve and was the largest packer of pork in the world and shipped it in a lot of other places, around the world, as well as providing it to, the Chinese folks. And Luder really wanted to do a sort of transnational merger, and Wan Long resisted that. But in 2013, after Luder stepped down, and his successor Larry Pope was in the CEO's chair at Smithfield, in 2013, Wan Long came back with a buyout offer for Smithfield, which was $7 billion. It was 30% above the market capitalization of Smithfield, and it was financed by a $4 billion loan from the government-backed Bank of China, which was approved by the Chinese in a single day. So you're talking about a tremendous amount of political pressure on Wan Long in order to get this done, and the support of the Chinese Communist Party and the government. And it was a really interesting thing because politically here in the U.S., people saw, look, this is the largest potential buyout of an American company by a Chinese company in history. And doesn't this raise some national security concerns? This isn't about jingoism. This is just about, like, how do we protect our own food supply in the United States? There was a hearing in Congress, and it went, the way that hearings in Congress very often go when you have a massive company that wants to do something, and
they were offering
the company gets their way.
Yeah, the 30% over the price that was, I guess, expected is the tax to probably circumvent some of the concerns that you describe, which, maybe. Right? It's just like, hey, let's get this done. Let's make them an offer that they can't refuse, essentially.
Oh, absolutely. And, what was interesting is it came out later that the concerns that, some thoughtful people had about this buyout were correct, that in fact, the 12-year plan, or excuse me, the 5-year plan that came out in 2012 from China actually really encouraged the acquisition of overseas farmland and also biotechnology. So really what China wanted out of Smithfield was their technology. And this is really, gets to the heart of Wastelands in the story. They wanted to be able to continue to produce pork at the lowest possible rate. And ironically, in China, the lagoon and spray field system is not legal. So
wow,
it's actually easier and cheaper for North Carolina to spray hog crap on its neighbors than it is for Chinese, pork producers to make bacon over there.
Well, that doesn't entirely shock me, given the state of kind of crony capitalism in this country. And
No.
I wanted to take, that was going to be my next question. Just if you could explain the lagoons, the technology used, and how insane it is, the amount of waste that they have essentially just poured into an environment, and an environment there that also has a ton of water, rivers, streams. It's quite flat, so it's very susceptible to pollution in the same way. If you don't mind explaining their process.
Yeah, sure. So, look, when Wendell Murphy put these hogs in barns, he put 1,200 inside one shed, and then, multiply the sheds in order to multiply, the throughput. And some of these hog farms have 10 or 15 barns. You're talking about, you could have 15,000 animals on, one piece of property, and each hog produces the waste of 5 humans. So if you've got, 5,000 animals, then that's the waste of 25,000 humans, a small city, and if you've got 15,000 animals, you're talking about the waste of 75,000 human beings. So you've got to do something with that. This isn't the days of yore where hogs do their business on the ground and, rut around and, in the ground. You're talking about thousands and thousands of animals. So their idea was, look, the cheapest possible way is just to use the cesspool technology, if you can call it that humans have used for a long time for a lot of different reasons, including our own waste in rural settings. So they just took backhoes and dug big pits in the earth and, right next to the hog sheds, and then just flush the hog waste out. So the way that, that works in the barns is the hogs stand on concrete slats and the waste falls through. I mean, a lot of it, sadly, because these barns are not kept very clean and hogs just do their business all day, every day. A lot of the floors just look like they're standing in hog waste and rolling around in hog waste. You kind of can't believe how disgusting it is inside a lot of these hog sheds. But the waste that then falls through the slats gets flushed out by water through pipes into these open air cesspools. And, you're talking about the volume of 10 Olympic-sized swimming pools or 40 water towers. I mean, like 250,000 gallons each. These are massive, massive cesspools. And then, the challenge, of course, is that if they're open to the air, not only are you constantly flushing the waste out of the hogs coming through the barns, every 5 months, there's a new crop of hogs and they're producing waste every single day. But then you've got, rainfall coming from, overhead and from the sky. So that then adds to the volume, and you've got, in a cesspool, a finite volume. So they then, the industry had to figure out, what do you do with, with the volume when it reaches the berm, because the permit says you can't, let it go over. So they then invented these giant, I call them Jurassic-sized lawn sprinklers. I mean, they're basically like waste cannons that you hook up with, by a fire hose to a pump, and just shoot this stuff out, into the air, high overhead.
I saw this in Delaware too, with the chicken waste. It's unbelievable. It looks like a sprinkler. Right? It looks like they're sprinkling or like tending to the field, but they're literally spraying waste.
Yeah. And with hog waste, because they've got so much of it, actually, what they would do, I mean, it actually looks like, I mean, if you imagine, a 5-alarm fire and the way that, the fire department would spray with the big hoses, this giant rooster tail of water up into a building to put out a fire. It's that volume of hog waste being sprayed out 100 feet in the air. I mean, it's a surreal, I mean, the way that they did this, and then without any concern whatsoever. I mean, none for the neighbors. And in some cases, even in litigation, you're talking about, this is 13, 14, 15, 16. They were taking these pictures and videos. They were still spraying with these giant big guns directly toward these houses. I mean, not like a fire hose directed at somebody's window, but I mean, right up into the air in the field next door, such that the wind just, picks it up and it drifts on the breeze. So you asked about the technology. I mean, how does a cesspool work? It's basically just, they call it anaerobic digestion. I mean, it's just that the way that nature treats waste, except in this case, you've got so much of it and it's so concentrated and it's not going to go away. I mean, it's not like it's, the way waste gets treated by the forest floor. I mean, that's a natural process where everything biodegrades and it goes back into nature and becomes, food for, plants and whatnot. You're talking about such a volume of feces and urine coming from these animals that there's nothing that you can do with it. There's no way that you can turn it into, usable fertilizer, no matter how much the industry says, oh, we have a waste utilization plan. I mean, in reality, they're just trying to get rid of it as fast as they can, and they spray it all the time. And in fact, there have been countless violations that have been documented where they're spraying when they shouldn't, spraying toward, rivers and streams. You mentioned, I mean, Eastern North Carolina is the remnants of an ancient sea. It's a coastal plain. It's loamy soil. This is like, there's tons of runoff. And I mean, it's been proven, goes into the rivers and streams. And when there's a hurricane, all of these things overflow. 2,000 cesspools, more than that, of that volume across Eastern North Carolina. And when Florence came through and Floyd 20 years before, I mean, you've got, billions of gallons of hog waste flowing into these beautiful rivers, killing fish, coming out in plumes into the intercoastal waterway. I mean, boaters have seen plumes of hog waste after hurricanes and storms. I mean, it's surreal. It's like you look at it and you're like, wait a minute, is this really 2023? And are we really handling waste in this way? Like, is this 100 years ago? Because we used to do this with human waste, in a smaller volume. We had open sewers. It was uncivilized. And then one day we said, you know what, we're tired of this and we need to actually civilize our waste production and waste management. And no, they haven't done it with animals.
This is what deregulation looks like, really. I mean, this is what happens when you have a libertarian utopia, and it's the desire you allow industry to run rampant in this way. I mean, talk a bit about the actual, now that we have a clear picture of how insane and disgusting these practices are, like, what are the specific health problems that were faced by the residents as a result of all of this waste being exposed to them for so many years?
Yeah, I mean, there are just a lot of breathing problems. I mean, so one woman whose house is right next door, to a spray field, I mean, just developed terrible asthma, and just, I mean, she struggled to breathe for a long, long time. There have been heart issues like hypertension. The experience of these people talked about, especially at the, back in the height of this in the 1990s and the 2000s, of waking up at night in their own bedroom and finding themselves overwhelmed by a stench that, and it's not just a stench like that's just offensive to smell, but it gets into your nose and into your soft tissue, your nose and throat. It burns almost like a light acid. And it makes the air just inhospitable. You don't want to breathe it. I mean, one woman told me a story of waking up at night multiple times, and of course her windows are open. They don't, these folks don't have air conditioning. They have God's air conditioning. They open their windows. They let the breeze come in. And with the breeze, if they're spraying next door, comes the hog waste. And so, this woman, told me about waking up at night and having to flee her bedroom. But where do you go? Because it's everywhere. It's inside her house and all of her rooms. And of course, it's outside. So there's no way that she could actually get away from it. I mean, it just followed her everywhere. I mean, the consequences for people's quality of life and their own conception of the land. I mean, this is their ancestral land. The dirt beneath their feet is their most valuable asset. Personally, their most valuable resource. And to have it polluted like this, I mean, in that same woman who told me the story about waking up at night, I mean, she had to padlock her wells because the well water got polluted. And I mean, you talked about that with poultry farmers. I mean, it's, this stuff gets into the groundwater. It's not supposed to. And yet, one of the people that testified in the trials is this heroic hog farmer who was willing to testify against his own interest and against his own bosses, the only hog farmer in the entire state of North Carolina who was still under contract and was willing to testify. His name is Tom Butler, and he's one of my heroes. And he talks about how, look, these lagoons, they were designed for 30 years. A lot of them are unlined. It's just clay. And they seep into the groundwater. I mean, this stuff is getting out. Now, the industry says, no, it's not. Please don't say that because, that's illegal. But he said everyone knows it's happening. And these lagoons were designed for 30 years, and most of them are reaching the end of their life cycle. And what then? I mean, it's not like we're going to dig a new pit in the earth and transfer the waste. It's just, this is an environmental disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah, I mean, and it did happen, obviously.
Yes, and it has happened before.
Yeah, and now, like, I guess we can begin kind of talking about the residents filing suit against Smithfield Foods. Spoiler alert, they win after 7 years of litigation. Take us through that process and how that began, what really stuck out to you in researching this for your book.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm a lawyer by training. I worked in litigation and in the court system and the federal courts, so it was really natural for me to work on this story and to bring it to life. I mean, the law can be boring, but the law can also be incredibly dramatic when you have amazing people going up against a gigantic corporation and actually bringing justice to the courthouse, notwithstanding the pushback from an industry that was basically owned the legislature and was able to get special laws passed to try to kill the litigation in the process. And I mean, the level of the rallying that went on, the PR push, millions of dollars to create a grassroots organization to oppose the litigation, all this funded by industry, rallying the thousands of hog growers and families, and, to make it like, look, these out-of-state trial lawyers are trying to take down the farm families in North Carolina, which is what Smithfield, the Chinese-owned multi-billion-dollar behemoth, was. That was their tagline. We're standing for family farmers. And these out-of-state trial lawyers who also happen to be from North Carolina, are trying to take down the poor family farmers from Eastern North Carolina. It's just wild. I mean, the level of lying, the level of deception, the level, of corporate capture of a legislature, and all that's, told. It was so much fun to write it into the story, because the drama was all real. I mean, I wasn't having to make any of it up, but I often thought, as a novelist, I couldn't make up anything better. I mean, it's just it's surreal. So yeah, the origin story of the litigation is, Smithfield had agreed in 2000, after Hurricane Floyd blew through and dumped many feet of rain and flooded all of these lagoons and killed billions of fish in the Neuse River and others from these plumes of hog waste flowing down into the beautiful Albemarle and Pamlico Sounds inside the Outer Banks. Smithfield had been forced by the state to invest in new technology. They invested in it. The scientists developed it, and then Smithfield torpedoed it after spending a mere $25 million. After a decade, technologies developed to replace lagoons and spray fields, but Smithfield uses a technicality in the agreement with the state AG to shut it down, and it was never deployed. It was considered economically infeasible because it was $1 more expensive than the medieval lagoons and spray fields. So Smithfield was able to basically, win this, this political contest and shut everything down. The media had gone away. The state, the governor, the legislature was basically in the pocket of industry. So, the neighbors, they knew that their only hope was to get a lawyer to represent them in the courthouse. The challenge was, what lawyer worth their salt would take on a multi-billion-dollar behemoth like this that has so much political power. You're just going to be flushing your career, your law firm down the toilet, and nobody wanted to touch it. Nobody wanted to come near it until one day in 2013, it just so happened that these folks connected with the one lawyer in North Carolina. I mean, really, the one lawyer who would have been able to take this on. Her name's Mona Lisa Wallace, and she's really the star of Wastelands, one of the stars. And she's a really remarkable woman. I mean, she came from a working class family in a multiracial area. She was a graduate from her newly desegregated high school in Salisbury, North Carolina, and has always had a real heart for racial issues and environmental causes. And she was successful in going up against a number of polluting industries in the past. And so when she heard about this, she was like, I'm disgusted this is happening in my state. I know it's going to cost a ton of money, millions of dollars. I know that I have no idea if we'll ever get any of that back. But I just can't see this happening in North Carolina. Like, somebody needs to stand up and go toe to toe with this industry. She agreed. She basically took it on in 2013, and it did, as you mentioned, it took 7 years. Went through 5 federal trials in Raleigh in 2018 and 19. She brought on board one of the best trial attorneys in the country, Mike Heskey, to handle the cases in front of the jury. Mike is an incredible person, and he also is a star in Wastelands. It was so much fun to get to know him. Mona had she's got a small firm. It's a very family firm. So her daughter was part of the litigation team. Her nephew was part of the litigation team. And the other lawyers that work with her, just a handful of them, really, it's like a family. And so they became extremely close to the 500 plaintiffs that they represented from 26 communities. They brought 26 cases. These are called mass actions, not a class action. So they have to manage all 500 plaintiffs as individual clients. And they had 26 cases that they were managing with these a small firm, Mona's firm, and then Mike is basically a solo practitioner. And they had a little bit of help, but it truly was a David versus Goliath story, because Smithfield hired one of the biggest law firms in the world, 1,000 attorneys, McGuire Woods, to represent them. And they had, parachutes for pockets, as I put it in the book, and spent tens of millions of dollars. Nobody knows how much, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was north of $50 million on the litigation. And, all to basically try to stave off these black people from saying, hey, look, you've been polluting our land for 30 years. Just stop it. Just stop. Just clean up. We don't want you to go out of business. We don't want you to stop making bacon. Just make it in a cleaner way. And frankly, honor the promise you made back in 2000 to replace lagoons and spray fields. Just use the new tech that you paid to develop. You're just going to cost a little bit more, maybe a lot more initially, but you need to do it because it's a cost that should be on your bottom line and not borne by society. That really was the fundamental argument. And in the end, the jury, I wish I could play for you and your audience. I mean, that I've got this presentation that I do when I speak about this. And I mean, it's just the videos, the pictures are just overwhelming. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. The jury got to see it. And so it wasn't entirely surprising that they responded the way they did.
And just to put a button on this before I let you go, Corban, how did they respond? Like, what was the monetary compensation in the end of this?
Yeah, so the third trial of the 5 delivered the largest verdict in North Carolina history. So of the 500 plaintiffs, it was just 8 people, 8 neighbors in one neighborhood, and it was nearly $500 million in mostly punitives. I mean, so basically the jury was saying to Smithfield, stop it, cut it out. Like, we don't have the ability to force you to get rid of these lagoons and spray fields, but we're going to make you feel a world of hurt for having done what you've done. And really, that third trial in many ways, is the sort of culmination of the story as I tell it, though there were 2 trials afterward that, ultimately precipitated a settlement. Unfortunately, the settlement was confidential. I don't know how much it is, but I know Mona and Mike really well. And I can tell you that with 500 plaintiffs, you're talking about a lot of money. I know that, they got compensation. I don't know how much, but I do know that it was transformative for some of these folks, in really beautiful ways, sending kids to college, making improvements on homes that desperately needed it, allowing for retirement for some people who probably wouldn't have been able to retire. They didn't get rich and didn't want to get rich from this settlement. But ultimately what they wanted is for the industry to change. So the industry is now, starting to see the light. But unfortunately, and, your politics podcast, I mean, at the end of the day, like, this is a political problem, and the solution has to be in the legislature. Cory Booker's got a great law called the Farm System Reform Act that, if we could get Congress to be sensible, would actually rein in corporate, companies like Smithfield, these large-scale agricultural companies across the board, not just in pork, and really require some meaningful regulation and some changes in the way that our meat is produced in the United States, changes that would make it more humane and more humane for the neighbors and more humane for the animals, and ultimately be better for all of us. But right now, we have corporate capture in the United States of America, and it is a challenge.
You're right. I keep, returning to just, we could just regulate this, as opposed to having to have these punctuated moments in history where you have class action suits or mass action suits that result in companies essentially having to pay fines, but nothing structurally changes. And I think that's a great lesson to take away from this. Corban Addison,
absolutely.
The book is Wastelands, The True Story of Farm Country on Trial. We'll put a link to your book in the descriptions everywhere you're listening to or watching this. Corban, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Emma. Take care.
Take care. All right, guys, with that, we are going to wrap up the first hour of this program, head into the fun half. The number is 646-257-3920. We'll take your calls, read your IMs. Matt, what's happening in Left Reckoning Land?
We had Gus Bova on to talk about, more corporate malfeasance, and this in the case of Elon Musk basically having contractors die of heat stroke, and maybe we don't report that to the state, even though they've given us specific carve-outs and good deals in part.
But that didn't engender goodwill?
it's it didn't. It turns out that like bringing all these good jobs and it's the future of industry. It actually means abusing contractors. So and then we also talked to Harvey K, who is writing speeches for Marianne Williamson. And we talked a little bit about that. Patreon.com/Left for that.
Kowalski said, I like this interview. If you read this in time, please let your guest know. I'm sorry, I didn't read it in time. But yeah, I mean, it's the... I appreciate the I am. But yeah, the whole... I mean, we saw this with Aaron Brockovich. Like, this is a tale as old as time. Flint. Whatever it is. I mean, that's a little bit more, literally structural, but the corporate capture in that story as well. But anyway, so on ESPN, we spoke about the playoffs. We talked about Dylan Brooks and the Memphis Grizzlies kind of unprecedentedly coming out and really trying to dampen the market for him when he becomes a free agent. We spoke about the NHL playoffs as well. YouTube.com/ESPN show. And we have Brandon soon. He's
hello,
here.
hello.
There
Sorry,
he is.
everyone, for having my hand on the mic. I need to get a new mic stand, but that's coming.
You sound good. Coming. It sounds good, so.
Glad to hear it.
Okay.
Can you hear it, Brandon? Just continue the count just to make sure we don't have a delay. 1, 2, 3.
Oh no, there was no delay. I just did that.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
That was all me. No, I just left that.
That was a psyop.
Yeah, I mean, man, you're just like completely messing with our heads here. But
that was a power play. Dead air is a power play.
Totally. If you speak first, you lose in negotiations. I've heard that before.
Exactly.
So what's happening over on the discourse, Brandon?
Yes, so you can tell I'm excited because I actually have some recording done. I was able to meet, it sounds like I was trying to get together conflicting nations, but no, we met to talk about the Disney versus DeSantis kerfuffle. I've been keeping up with that a lot, as well as the various happenings, and so you can tune into that tomorrow once I am done editing. It does take up it's a pretty light episode, just me and Adair talking like two black dudes trying to figure out what's going on in the world.
All right, well, check it out. The discourse, everybody. Do we have Matt Binder? Not yet? All right, well, we'll head into the fun half. He can plug Doomed and Scam Economy, but check those out. Guys, also check out Leftist Mafia, which Binder does is it tonight? Thursday?
Yeah, I think so. Thursday night.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, I will be on a plane, but I will check it out later. We're going to head into the fun half again. The number is 646-257-3920. Please become a member, support this show. Actually, we do have Binder, so maybe we can have him in here right now. While we do that, we rely on your support to make this show run, to get us paid. It's nice to have some money in the bank. We appreciate it. Whatever you can do. We're up against right-wing media outlets that have billionaire benefactors.
Yeah, and don't have to micromanage advertising.
Yeah, and like we can barely get a bathroom that works. Gonna be honest with you guys.
Or elevators.
We can't afford the level of skits that
tough in this building. Yeah, what'd you say, Brandon?
We can't afford the level of skits that Steven Crowder is able to put together.
Exactly.
Gay Captain America, gay Superman.
If we could come up with those kinds of things if you become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. Support this show. Keep us independent, surviving, thriving, all that good stuff. Matt Binder, hello, friend.
Hello.
What's happening on Doomed and Scam Economy?
On this week's episode of Doomed, I had Lance of the Surfs on the show to talk about his appearance on, we had a little bit of I guess you could call it a pool party. Discussing our time on each of us on Tim Pool's show, and it broke down his recent appearance and how he knocked it out of the park, and just exchange sort of what our experience was in terms of how Tim Pool presents his arguments on the show. So check that out at youtube.com/Matt Binder. And at doomedcast.com, and got a new episode of Scam Economy coming out next week. The most recent episode on there was my discussion about what was going on with Twitter recently. So you can check that out at scameconomy.com. And yeah, that's it.
All right. Again, the number 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half, everybody.
Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude, you want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey Sam, hey Andy, you guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up.
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
We are back. We are back. Just a quick break, guys. Do not panic. We are here. Here to do some clips. I'm turning off the voicemail. We are in the phones. There we go. Custodial artist. Okay, so first it was sexy candy, then gas stoves. Now you liberals are saying I can't spray poo in the air? What has happened to America? It's we did an interview earlier, you guys, about pollution from runoff. Kowalski from Nebraska, the I was waiting for here. I've read a lot about the southeastern United States being particularly bad for livestock production. Too much rain, so there's too much runoff. Geography-wise, you have land formations that concentrate water flow, and that also flows towards population centers. The area is wet, hot, and humid, so basically the perfect location for biological outbreaks. The Midwest and Great Plains are better for this. Also, the ground being frozen half the year means you can stockpile waste without runoff and spread the manure over hundreds of thousands of acres instead of a few tens of thousands in the South and Atlantic seaboard. I fear the South's deregulation of clean water policies will keep eroding our decent water regulations up here. Nebraska would be the last to fall solely because of our hunting and fishing industries are so powerful enough, especially after teaming up with environmentalists to stop the destruction of the water supply left as regulations. Yes, I mean that was what was super clear too from that interview as well, is just like the fact that it immediately transitioned from tobacco land to hog to like hog processing, meat processing in that area makes it just it's kind of nonsensical, honestly, but they let the poorer communities bear the brunt of it per usual. Thomas 07, the Intel project in Ohio at least has all union construction putting the facility up. I guess that's a reference to the Amazon project. Matt referenced the Intel thing. Thomas though says the Intel project in Ohio at least has all union construction putting the facility up.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, that's a good. Yeah, but like I'm saying, like that's a good. The thing is like capitalists should not be in charge of these things at all. Like once we decide, and that's like why they are afraid. The real reason they're afraid of taking government money is once you decide that the government has an interest in making sure these things are built and produced, then like why are we again like, okay, good, we force them to use union labor. That's great. I love that. More of that, please. We should be doing that particularly with electric vehicles, and we're not. We're letting the automakers get around that. But like we should also say, yeah, you can't just do these layoffs. And
conditions.
Yeah, exactly.
Conditions.
But I mean, yeah, good to note. Like more of that, please. Thanks.
Maddie Moron, did y'all see the quotes from the Biden administration officials talking about how the town hall was a goldmine for campaign attack ads? Talked about how now his quotes would basically dig his own grave. Grim shit. Hopefully it works better than it did the first time they ran this playbook.
That's so revealing because like it was dig his own grave because Joe Biden certainly can't, sure as hell can't do it because he's too damn.
He can't pick up a shovel.
Exactly. So like yeah. Exactly what we wanted. Something where they can defeat themselves and we don't have to do anything, just like last time.
And also, he's out here now, yesterday at least, saying something along the lines of, talking about they're holding the debt ceiling thing for ransom. It's like he said, I want to responsibly cut spending.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, all right, we're back.
So we're back,
We're
baby.
So back, guys.
You're really
Deficit
feeling...
Hawk Joe is back. FDR Joe is a thing of the past.
That's a Zients special, is it not?
Right.
Right or wrong, family of mine in North Carolina had to put a filter on the pipes because of all the E. coli in the water well. A stream runs behind the house, which is polluted with runoff from God only knows. The state is almost majority Republican. Did the people care about the destruction of their beautiful land? Of course, but all they need to hear is CRT or LGBTQ, and they run straight into the arms of the very people who are destroying their home. No one but far-right radio and theocratic loons are listened to, and the folks down here eat it up. They're not all racist homophobes, but enough are to keep Republicans in power. Yeah, no, I mean, I hear that. I think that that's a valid critique. I do want to say, though, that they have heavily gerrymandered districts in North Carolina, and there's a Democrat who's the governor right now. So there's at least some hope. It's just that structurally Republicans have made it very difficult to get them out of power. All right, but let's do a clip.
Sorry. Can we, I mean, unless you got a clip offhand, there's this Politico article.
Okay, yes.
I have a new hero.
I hesitated to talk about this just because I haven't read it yet, but I've only heard.
It's a longer thing, but I've skimmed some of the relevant portions. But the drug-fueled protests in Dianne Feinstein's office you haven't heard about. Tales of a workplace woe from the underside of nation's capital. I don't know. Have any of you heard about this story, Binder or Brandon?
I haven't heard about this one specifically. I don't think.
Did it come out this morning?
Yeah. So Jamarcus Purley's staff, this guy who It came out today, yes. Very...
This is where the anecdote of her confusing Raphael Warnock and Tim Scott came from.
Oh, I haven't got that paragraph, but this is an interesting one. Things had come to a head 2 weeks earlier on a phone call with other members of the office. Purley had let loose, airing concerns of what felt like 10 minutes. He talked about the coworkers who had touched his hair while he sat at his desk, how the senator hadn't even learned his name or spoken to him despite 5 years of service to her.
So this is, by the way, Feinstein's former chief of staff at this point.
Not chief of staff, staffer.
Staffer, sorry.
I believe, right? Just on the staff, yeah. How the chief of staff seemed to be operating as a shadow senator since the actual one was, in his opinion, no longer mentally there. And then she said cared more about her dog Kirby than she does about black people. Apparently, after he finished speaking, Purley said there was silence. Purley knew that he wasn't long for the job. He ordered mushrooms later that day.
Oh my God.
Now, emboldened by psilocybin, he walked through the door into Feinstein's darkened office. His presence tripped the motion-activated lights. His heart rate quickened, but no one came. He had planned a film where he would just recite the injustices he'd seen and felt while working on the Senate, but on the walk over to the Capitol, he changed his plan. Instead of using his voice, he would simply put on music and smoke a joint while I looked directly in the camera. And this is maybe where the psilocybin is overpowering his best laid plans, because I think maybe a statement probably would have been better. But he believed his gesture would work like a piece of protest art, grabbing people. Basically, if you want to scroll down a little bit, he smokes a joint in Feinstein's office.
So did he resign?
Yes, he did.
Yeah,
he resigned.
He resigned, yes. And there's scroll down, Bradley. There you go. And I'll just say that is what every single one of Dianne Feinstein's staff should be doing.
Absolutely. Resigning. Yeah.
But that's like the key point is like in the terms is like, I mean, this story, people are going to focus on the mushrooms or whatever, but I would say that it operated medicinally there and offered the guy a little bit of clarity. And like that, the point about the chief of staff should not be a shadow senator. That is not who people elected in California to be a senator.
Yeah.
Oh, to be clear, she technically fired him, which I guess probably smart on his part. Do whatever you can to get fired, so then he could file for unemployment. I guess maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what we need to be normalizing in this situation. I know people were like very upset at Ken Klippenstein for posting the staffers on Twitter. I didn't agree with posting their salaries. I actually think it undercut it a little bit if I were to tweak it with Ken, because they're not getting paid that much.
Especially for DC or San Francisco.
Yeah, but I do think that we need to start shaming some of these staffers who are enabling this charade right now. They're trying to remain in power and being
public authority.
Yeah, being the staff for the number 2 on the Judiciary Committee, a very senior senator, works out well for them. But like, I mean, in the United States, we need a better culture of resignations based on principle.
Well, no, I think we have the opposite. I think in this country, we try to make, I guess, quote unquote, the problem, because I know what you're talking about. And people seem to be able to agree that Dianne Feinstein was a problem, both politically and also just like, her health has become an impediment to her doing her job. But what we seem to have been slowly ebbing away at, and that you see it all throughout the political media establishment, is that there seems to only be blame for the single most important person in any structure or institution that is performing negatively. People who write for the New York Times don't want to be blamed for the larger structural issues at the New York Times. They don't want to be blamed for that. They just want to take all of the benefit from working in these roles. They want to put that they worked for Dianne Feinstein on their resume. They want to benefit from that clout. Maybe they don't make enough money. They make more money than some people. A lot of people in this country do. So I think it does resonate with some people how much they make to be objectively, if not in the political sense. Personally, I think a lot of people see that they're doing the wrong thing. Ultimately, I think that enough people see that they're doing the wrong thing. Enough people understand that these staffers and many staffers like them historically and contemporaneously, and then also many other people who operate in the political media establishment as just a cog in a wheel, are trying to further their own careers at the detriment of many other people. And there just has to be some kind of blame that is maybe not as much as Dianne Feinstein or some of the higher paid members or higher level members of our political establishment. But, it just has to be untenable or, at least morally damaging to take a job at a place that is contributing to the overall degradation of our society. People just want to tell you that they're not responsible for the larger issues at stake in their institutional roles. But I think that only really fits for people outside of the political and media establishment, because you're expecting people in politics and people in critical media to be a little bit more reflexive, a little bit more, I think, dynamic in the way they consider their roles in these organizations. And like, oh yeah, I write political news for an audience of millions or hundreds of thousands, but I'm just a cog in the wheel. I think just falls, on deaf ears. Same with like, oh yeah, I'm just the head staffer for, one of the most powerful representatives in the country, but I'm just a cog in the wheel who's trying to become a bigger cog in a bigger wheel. But forget that, how far does it go up?
The article says they knew that her mental faculties are degrading rapidly, essentially. That is part of what they understood. I mean, the staffers understand that her chief of staff was acting as a shadow senator. And I sent these images of her. We just got to show this. This is what happened yesterday. She came into the Senate. First of all, she wasn't here for the first judiciary vote today, so they made this huge spectacle of it. The idea that Chuck Schumer thinks that standing by her, I don't think we have the picture of them standing together here, but like coming in with her on and showing oh, she's back, baby, she's here. As Schumer's here, standing here with her. I mean, guys, like, I feel horrible. I hope she's not in any pain.
But she doesn't.
But she
look
looks
well.
horrible. She is not well.
She's in a wheelchair. Every report seems that she looks frailer and like weaker than she did before. And this is no comment. Like, none of this is malicious when I'm saying this. I'm just saying she's about to be a 90-year-old woman who has suffered from a clear bad case of shingles, and also by all accounts is in some level of cognitive decline.
Absolutely.
By all accounts.
By all accounts, by her staff's accounts, by everybody's accounts.
She represents a state of 40 million people.
And Chuck Schumer thinks no, it's not good politics to kind of maybe push her out and get some new blood in here. It's better politics to stand beside her and walking with her like, oh, the triumphant return of Dianne, as if anyone cares. Really, does any voter care besides like a narrow true blue Democrat? Go ahead.
Defense contractors care.
Raytheon
listen.
cares.
Well,
no,
we start with Dianne Feinstein, and then what's next? People are going to call for Nancy Pelosi's resign? I refuse. Yes, you are worried about the knock-on effects for your girl Nance, but I mean, she is resigning though. Nancy Pelosi's actually doing something a little bit more admirable than what we're seeing here with Feinstein. It's honestly the Senate brain disease. It's Senate comedy disease. No one gives a shit about we missed you, Dianne. They care about, are we going to have abortion judges that are going to protect abortion actually get pushed through? Are we going to have a meaningful hearing on Clarence Thomas's impropriety? Let's go, buddy.
I think there's a certain branch of not just Democratic voter, but American that likes the idea of what this represents, that you can become so important to some institution that, you're just kept around as a figurehead. It's about power. It's about control. Some people are able to very
individual
easily.
Glory.
Yeah, individual glory.
I honestly think it's even simpler. I think these politicians just develop a straight up fan base around them. These are parasocial relationships. I don't even think there's anything deeper than that. Some of these Democratic, true blue, diehard voters seriously vote for people, not policies, and that's what we're hearing.
I mean, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We've been through this before.
I mean, but the cult of personality around her was a little bit more. I mean, by the way, you go in the Brooklyn Mall there, where the Trader Joe's and the Target is. There's a big statue of her there, but regardless, she at least the cult of personality there, I felt was a little bit more acute. I just don't know if there is this massive constituency that loves Dianne Feinstein.
Well, no, but they have to say that, because if they said the real reason, which is that defense contractors need her in there, and the chief of staff has important votes that he promised them. Like, that's not politics.
Right.
So they have to say, like, this is about, making sure, she has dignity, and we need to be sympathetic in this moment. No, it's because there are powerful interests that want her to continue to be propped up and wheeled out and to make votes like that to the extent that she can, or they don't mind, those powerful interests, the same ones that put her there, don't mind about the judges, don't mind about all the business that isn't being done, because they don't give a shit about that stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that, the idea of personal professional ambition in this country, unless it's like the literal worst job you can imagine, like, you're just applying to be Hitler, I guess, people will excuse a lot of, personal ambition at the expense of large swaths of the population. People will say that, Kamala Harris had to jail all those people because how was she going to get to a position that she needed to be in? Nancy Pelosi has to be in office because, people have a right to just shameless self-promotion. And I think that's also why, like, the staffers get a pass, because, they're trying to shamelessly self-promote themselves within this industry. And, a lot of people just feel as though that's a completely reasonable thing to, do at the expense of, large parts of the population. I think when it's Democrats, it's a lot easier to pretend like the selfless promotion is one-to-one with getting things done progressively. But that's just, there's nothing that bears that to be true. And only because we're so used to people being so gung-ho about that shameless self-promotion, that shameless professional ambition within these spaces, are we able to, like, imagine that, like, Ruth Bader Ginsburg or, Nancy Pelosi or Dianne Feinstein simply being in these positions are enough to push these causes forth, even as they argue against that last half of them.
Yeah. And I just don't understand, though. I mean, what you're saying is on point, Brandon. It's just the fact that, like, in this country, we need to have more of a culture of what it means to be a public servant as opposed to a careerist. Like, I mean, I don't want the same kind of analysis that you're describing being applied to staffers and people who are literally supposed to be democratic representatives of their constituents. That could be applied to, say, if you want to move up as an executive at Walmart or something like that. I mean, it's part of the financialization of our politics to a degree, those incentives being laid bare, but it's also just deeply disturbing.
I can't believe you would judge these people for just for their decisions.
I hate women. I guess that's it. I mean, honestly,
he didn't even do anything except post who worked for her. I mean, you mentioned the salary, but that's not even like a contactable detail, though. Like, it's not like he was sending harassment towards them and like directly saying how you could contact them. People should know the staffers who work. I mean, they do if they want to look it up. It's actually usually listed right on their website. Info. Yeah, this is not hidden. I think that should be known. I mean, if this wasn't information to be known, then there would be a lot of reporting on our end that would be lost in terms of, like, when Republicans hire, like, far right-wing activists to be their staffers. Like, this is important stuff that we should know. We should know who our public officials hire.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that your point is, true, Emma, that, like, listing their salaries, if it includes anything, is that the salaries don't matter because they're doing it for power. This is a job that you have in order to get closer to power. Like, whether or not you're paid well, there are benefits that, are not quantifiable with the salary specifically. And, you can argue that the power they want is for good reasons, but that's only to justify, well, this is not being done out of, like, selflessness, other than, like, you might believe you'll wield power more selflessly than, the next person. Like, but there's no evidence of that because they don't do anything positive.
100%. All right, let's do this. I just want to touch on George Santos really quickly.
Oh, my gosh.
So George Santos, 13 counts of financial crimes being leveled against him. He pled not guilty yesterday in court. And of course he did. And we have no reason not to trust him. This is him outside of the courthouse, explaining his plea of not guilty. And notice that he's essentially just using Donald Trump's language word for word.
The ability for me to address and defend myself. We have an indictment. We have the information that the government wants to come after me on, and I'm going to comply. I've been complying throughout this entire process. I have no desire not to comply at this point. They've been gracious in there. Now I'm going to have to go and fight to defend myself.
I love that little addition of that they've been gracious in there after the saying they've been the information they want to come after me with.
Yeah, right. These guys
went a little bit too hard.
Yeah, the people who could be responsible for jailing me are sons of bitches, but actually they're very respectful too. I got to walk that back.
To comply. I've been complying throughout this entire process. I have no desire not to comply at this point. They've been gracious in there. Now I'm going to have to go and fight to defend myself. The reality is it's a witch hunt. Because
there we go.
It makes no sense that in 4 months, 5 months, I'm indicted. You have Joe Biden's entire family receiving.
There it is.
Wait, press pause for a second. I gotta say, the fact that it took that short to indict him means that the stuff they found must be really obvious.
That's what I'm saying.
My God, yeah.
If a blatant criminal got into Congress, how long would you think it would take before that attention would become too much for you to continue to skate?
Yeah, and the one thing that he probably he has to stand on here is that the reason that he's getting indicted like this, and other senators who say trade on information that they have in advance aren't getting investigated is, well, one, we don't have enough laws in that area, but two,
it's America, baby.
He has no allies. I mean, the entire Long Island Republican Party has denounced him. They see him as a liability for them. In Congress, Kevin McCarthy begrudgingly has kept him around because he needs that vote, but there's no constituency really backing this guy.
Because they get money the same way the Bidens do, which is big payments from he does scams.
But his is right. They get corruption. They're
and that's legal as apple pie.
Right. The legalized corruption machine. They're a part of that. He's doing low level schemes unemployment fraud, where he's collecting unemployment as he's making 6 figures. I mean, he's collecting money for a super PAC and then buying luxury designer clothes.
The GoFundMe dog veteran scam.
Yes.
He's a super
honestly
criminal.
may put him in the gay Hall of Fame, quite frankly.
I mean, maybe. For me, at least, he's in the scammer Hall of Fame.
I did see someone tweet listen, LGBT, saying, fellow LGBT community members, we must respect this guy for being able to do this ridiculous scam. Right? It's pretty crazy.
It's a civil rights violation.
That's not. And he talks about foreign payments and stuff like that. It's but domestic payments are also bad. I think we should be definitely clamping down on all these sorts of slush funds. But I don't know. It seems a bit that's why you're not the same thing, really, George.
No.
You kind of jeopardized their thing.
I mean, it's just not a legal argument that there are other crimes going unprosecuted. But for me, it just makes me think, maybe you should have done those crimes then. You're making the argument that Hunter Biden got away with crimes that you feel he shouldn't have gotten away with. And that's unrelated to the crimes you committed. You should have committed those crimes then.
It's a definition of a whataboutism, but it's just funny because he's saying it.
Oh yeah, because he's the Joker, on television going I don't know what is the Riddler up to. It's doesn't matter.
Yeah, here we go.
Point. They've been gracious in there. Now I'm going to have to go and fight to defend myself. The reality is it's a witch hunt, because it makes no sense that in 4 months, 5 months, I'm indicted. You have Joe Biden's entire family receiving deposits from nine family members receiving money from foreign destinations into their bank accounts. It's been years of exposing. A lot of you here have reported on them, and yet no investigation is launched into them. I'm going to fight. I'm getting back to that. I'm going to fight my battle. I'm going to deliver. I'm going to fight the witch hunt. I'm going to take care of clearing my name, and I look forward to doing that.
I look forward to it too. I wish he got a Met Gala invite. I need some more George Santos in my life a little bit.
I look forward to the documentary on this. I look forward to what I can only assume it's going to be multiple seasons. A lot of these documentaries about scammers peter out because there's only one big scam, Theranos or WeWork or whatever. This guy has like a decades-long career of like.
Oh no, we're talking Grey's Anatomy seasons level of like scams for George Santos, the series. They're going to be doing new seasons about George Santos when I'm in my 50s.
I mean, if there's a trial, this just has to be televised. Like, we need to see the every oral arguments, cross-examination. Santos has to take the stand.
Can Santos represent himself?
Yes, we need Santos. We also need Santos.
He's a lawyer too.
Yes, we also need Santos to represent himself in court.
There's some.
Oh no, go ahead, Binder.
Oh no, go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Did any of you guys watch the show, the Jury Duty show on Amazon?
No, I heard good things though.
Okay, is it good?
It's very funny.
It's
I thought it was funny. There's this one moment where the guy, the defendant, chooses to represent himself, and he's running from the witness stand to the lawyer stand to basically question himself. Like he's running back and forth between them, and the judge is like, "You don't have to do that." And I want Santos to do that.
I want that too. I would love that.
So my buddy Blake Zeff, he was pursuing a documentary with George Santos. And yesterday on MSNBC, he came out on Ari Melber's show. And he had recordings of George Santos that he had from conversations with him that had never been released before. Everyone should go check those out.
Bradley's
they're
looking
amazing.
them up right now.
This guy really thought he was going to get away with this. I don't know if these specific recordings have been released yet, but he had been talking about ideas for a presidential run. Like he really thought he was unstoppable. And Blake says I've been in the know about this for a while. This documentary was never going to happen because this guy was trying to figure out how he could get paid without messing up any rules. But there was going to be no pay for the documentary. Like he wanted Blake to pay him millions of dollars for access to him, and that's not what you can. You don't do. That's not how it works.
No, it's not. We'll play it another time. We have so much more other stuff to get to, but yeah, check those out if you can, guys. All right, let's take a call really quickly. Calling from a 732 area code 732. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
It's Charlie from New Jersey.
Charlie from New Jersey. What's on your mind?
Okay, a few things. Last night with the CNN town hall, they basically proved that they secretly love talking about Trump. I mean, behind the scenes, they all hate him as a human being because I remember that black guy who was a reporter on election night when Trump lost. It was Don Lemon?
I think it was Van Jones. Was
Van Jones. I thought you were talking about the guy
Van
who got
Jones,
fired.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man.
I should have let you finish your
I remember
sentence.
he cried.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I remember he cried tears of joy when Trump lost. So secretly, they loved talking about him because presidential elections is when their heart starts going. But when Trump is involved, all they see is dollar signs.
I think that's true. I mean, I
mean, we definitely saw that. I mean, we're seeing this now broadly. Like, now's a lull in. I think maybe other people are growing fast. I don't know how Binder and Brown you guys are doing, but like, there's a lull in attention now. There's not as much attention in political media as there was. I mean, 2016 to 2020, and then like probably about 2 years following that. Was a absolute high point, and you could see it was absolutely because of Donald Trump. It was because of Donald Trump. It was insane.
Because he was just so fresh and new.
Well, he's a celebrity. People know about him even if they don't follow politics.
And he has a ridiculous personality that says he cares nothing about norms, and he's a content machine. So like
the content machine being, I think, super notable because of the Twitter account. Like every day was like, what did he tweet? What are we looking at in terms of what's the news of the day based on Trump's Twitter feed?
Well, and that's why Twitter literally adjusted their terms or gave a carve out to their terms of service to keep him on the platform because he was so good for business. It's like the same kind of calculation that these news outlets make. But at the same time, I will say, what Trump did and what I think is somewhat useful when you want to analyze corporate media in this way was he cracked their perception of what respectable politics should be. And he really just ripped the mask off of their innate belief in the respectability of these institutions because the guy just came in, acted like a buffoon, and Republicans followed suit. And so their entire worldview
The fish rots from the head down.
Yeah, I agree. But their entire
Anna
worldview, which is
Katsarian would say.
facile, was challenged by him. So their hatred of him is driven by their desire to validate their lauded opinions and untruthful opinions of like the respectability of the United States government and the media's role in it. So that's my take on it.
Good take.
Also,
Good take,
I don't know
Emma.
how many of them
Okay.
actually dislike Trump behind the scenes either. I think that's also not true as well.
Well,
there's a lot
I
of
think
envy.
certainly
There's a lot
on
of
CNN. On CNN, they'll never admit it, but I think there's in their personal lives, deep down in their hearts, they like them a little bit. Yeah.
I mean, the woman who was the CNN employee, staffer, host, whatever, who interviewed Trump last night, worked for the Daily Caller. She
Yeah.
without a doubt voted for him last time around. Please, I mean, give me a break. I mean, this is the fact that CNN would even pretend.
I mean,
Is
they
ridiculous.
probably maybe they don't own a MAGA hat, but it wouldn't surprise me. There's at least
Daily Caller
handful of
almost
people.
definitely owned a MAGA hat.
I think that attention is the currency of that industry. And so whatever it takes for attention is something that they're going to be, indebted to. Even if I think, because, like and dislike are very personal ways to describe their relationship with Trump, which is that dependent on. That's like when people say, do Democrats like Republicans? Like, yeah, sometimes personally they'll describe them as their friends, but more than anything, they're dependent on them, which is worse than liking. It's like it's codependency oftentimes. And so I think when it comes to like Trump and the media, platforms that like to have him on, whether it's pro or against him, they're just desperate for the ratings of Celebrity Apprentice, because for whatever we talk about like how many people watch Fox News, even their most popular shows, or how many people watch like MSNBC, it doesn't compare to like sports or like really heavily trafficked reality TV. It's just like the highest rated news
elections
show.
are pretty much a sports game
Exactly.
for voters,
well,
more or less.
Charlie,
Yeah, to this day, I have never referred to Trump as the president. I always refer to him as President Douchebag.
I mean, that's I'm in favor of that approach, but Charlie, I appreciate it, and are you in northern, central, or southern New Jersey?
I think I'm in central. Last I checked, I'm in Manalapan, so
that's central. I mean, the mythical central, but yeah,
Okay,
If you had to choose, you're probably north.
Yeah, I know, Emma. I know you're a GSG Garden State girl.
Oh yes, so is Bradley.
I'm a GSB.
Bradley and I are both north.
Oh, really? North.
There
Cool.
you go. All right.
Okay. Just a few more things.
Real quick.
George Santos is an idiot getting into politics with all of his baggage. Now he has the national spotlight on him. And second, why don't you do more stories on New Jersey? Hasn't it made tremendous progress in recent years with Governor Phil Murphy?
Well, I mean, look, Murphy's better than I thought he would be, but I hear you. We could do more stories on Jersey. Murphy's kind of Pritzkering it, like guys that were really rich before who have surprisingly decent runs as Democrats.
I'll admit I'm pretty surprised with how awesome he is. And finally, Matt, are you as pissed off as I am that Cody Rhodes lost at WrestleMania?
No,
Really
actually,
quick.
I thought it was the right move, but we'll leave it there. That's a whole argument right there.
All right, Charlie, you got four. You got four questions for the price of one. I gotta jump.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate
Left
you.
is best.
Left is best.
All right,
All right, let's do another clip here. Let's do this Blaze TV thing. This is ridiculous. So I've never heard of this guy really, or maybe I have Steve Deese. Blaze TV, wow, they are scraping by the Daily Wire, and I mean, I don't even know. Like the Daily Wire has a monopoly on a lot of the emerging right-wing insanity talent.
I'll just say, like, okay, this guy's got a Punisher sticker on his laptop. So before I put him up, imagine what he looks like. I mean, sorry.
Yeah. So, and not that.
It's the Punisher. These Punisher guys.
All
nerds.
Put him on screen for a sec, Matt. This is right wing Andy Richter.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I pictured in my head. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Oh God! But he's wearing a shirt that like a drunk lacrosse dad would wear before he gets into a fight. Yeah, I mean, the Punisher logo has basically been a substitute for being like, I love police brutality. That's what it is at this point, right?
Which is funny,
guess, yeah,
like,
but it's also like
the Punisher character is like the complete opposite.
Yeah. But it's also like it's like there's a bit of Arrested Development. Like I'm a big boy.
Oh, you're a big boy.
Yeah.
I mean, if you listen to Alphabet Boys, the guy who was the informant for the FBI in the Black Lives Matter protests, also obsessed with the Punisher. So that's the kind of guy, someone who feels very small and wants to feel like a big man.
God.
So that's Steve Deese here. Here he is speaking about a meeting that he went to, I guess at a ministry is what he talks about here, where he spoke to somebody who worked in the federal government and they know secrets. And you'll never guess what the secret is.
I mentioned this ministry meeting I was at last Tuesday. And
party time.
An individual spoke who has had close ties to varying degrees with every Republican administration in the White House going back to Reagan.
Boom, boom, boom.
It was Seder.
And over that period of time has developed a lot of ties with national defense, because he comes from an era where the military was actually our constituency.
Right, Lucifer himself.
Wait, can you pause it for a sec? When the military was our constituency, I really do love that implicit.
And not trying to what?
Now they're woke and trans.
They're woke and trans.
But it's just like, yeah, we get it. You guys are fascists. You like love you want the military on your side for God knows what. But here we go.
What's it? Which senator recently came out? The one in Alabama. What's his name again? The guy who used to be a coach.
Tuberville.
Yeah. Tuberville. He came out. Did you hear what yesterday? He came out and said something like, "I miss when we had white nationalists in the military."
A radio host asked him, like, "What do you think about potentially white nationalists being in the ranks of the military?" And he says, "They call them white nationalists. I call them Americans."
Oh yeah. Well,
I mean that's still accurate.
Yeah, I mean
he went further than that. He went further than that too. There was another quote from that as well. Hold on, let me see if I can pull it up. But go ahead.
All right, well, you can pull it up, but keep going, and let's just say the military is always going to lean right, just by its very nature. But here we go.
To learning Mandarin, the military that we have now, for example, he comes from an era where the military was actually those were our plans.
Sorry, pause it, but like. That is kind of an important skill, this language translation.
Why do you want to undercut subterfuge and
understanding, espionage and understanding communications? Like, what are you talking about? That they would be like Lee Harvey Oswald was a Marine who learned Russian.
It's the same reason people were learning Russian in the 80s, right? Like, whatever. There was a lot of there's some push to learn Mandarins because there's like it opens you up to economic opportunity when you're in college.
Well, and also the military, it's because they think we might fight a war with China.
Exactly.
So we should know what they're saying.
It's also a very, very old-timey belief that like simply learning the language of another country or culture will somehow indoctrinate you into like that's like colonialism in your head. Like, the moment you learn Chinese, you're gonna, suddenly see the light, of, the glorious Xi Jinping.
I mean, one can only hope.
If you learn even a single name of a Chinese food dish, you're already down the path.
Learning Mandarin, the military that we have now, for example, he comes from an era where the military was actually those were our planes, those were our tanks, not they're getting ready to point them at us. You know what I'm trying to say? Mm-hmm. So that's his generation, boomer generation. And so he still maintains a lot of contacts. Here's what he said to us. That he's told about 70% of the CIA is openly Marxist. 70%.
Oh, wow.
Think about that when you see stories that a Jewish lady and a former... Now, I met his crew. They were great to me. I enjoyed being on their show. But,
He's talking about Libs of TikTok and Tim Pool right now.
Okay. I thought he was going to go somewhere different. Like he was going to, go a negative place, but he's going to go a different negative place.
I mean, it's a little weird just to... Okay.
So the CIA... Okay.
Well, I don't know what she has to do with this.
No, I met his crew. They were great to me. I enjoyed being on their show. But, you know,
that's Steve Deason.
I wouldn't call Tim Pool a fence sitter. I think that's going too far.
No,
we would.
He's not like... He's kind of a recovering Occupy Wall Streeter. I mean, he's, I think, still discovering what his...
Just pause it real briefly. He calls himself that because it's part of his branding. And I would just recommend, again, for anyone who hasn't watched it, Timba on Toast, Tim Pool Milk Toast Fence Sitter YouTube video.
Okay, so this is a response to the Texas shooter. That's what it's being discussed.
So he's
here?
alluding basically that the government having confirmed that potentially that's the shooter's social media account, and on there he posted Tim Cast clips as well as a post where he said this whatever he was writing was inspired by libs of TikTok.
Gotcha.
Replacement worldview. I think that is still under construction. Okay. But consider that when you see stories like this person was radicalized by Tim Pool and libs of TikTok to go shoot up a mall. And again, it's
on an Eastern European random social media website.
Thank you for throwing that in. I appreciate that. Thank you. I know I don't like saying it. And I know it's hard. And I know if you're in the older generation, this is hard to really accept. It's not easy for me to accept, again, as a kid who grew up in the "We're America, bitch" 80s. All these institutions are enemies of the United States.
He said, "We're America,
America
bitch 80s."
That's what I thought. He said it so fast that we're America, bitch 80s. Okay, good.
Well, the country formerly known as the United States. That country largely doesn't exist any longer.
Fucking move, then.
None of them are on your side. And it is rare that you'll even get a fair hearing. That just goes to the conversation we were just having a minute ago about the presidential race.
All right, we've heard enough of this, I think. So he heard from a guy in his ministry who has connections with the government. Ooh, that's 70% of the military is Marxist.
Not just the military, the FBI. 70% of the deep state is Marxist.
Yeah, and people want to exaggerate, I think, how novel this sort of thing is. But people were criticizing H.W. Bush, or the right was criticizing H.W. Bush this exact same way. Like he's sort of a globalist, cuck, basically. And we need the more white nationalists. And I'll just point out, it's not just Tim Pool who's implicated in this shooters thing, but it was actually one episode of Tim Pool, as far as I know, that this guy screenshotted, and it was multiple screenshots of the interview with Eliza Schaefer, who, in my understanding, used to work at The Blaze.
There you go.
So I guess but this guy's argument, which is very poorly presented because he's trying to dance around, saying something explicitly racist or anti-Semitic, is that there was a school shooting that people think is Nazis, but his friends think that mall shooting where people think that where the guy had Nazi tattoos, but his friend in the military is happy that white nationalists or something are in the military, because in reality, Marxists in the FBI are in light allegiance with Tim Pool, who may or may not still be a leftist, and a Jewish woman who are actually somehow responsible for this mall shooting. It seems like the larger broad strokes of it. It was kind of confused.
That's exactly it. I couldn't really understand.
He's doing IDPOL and racism at the same time.
Right, there we go. He hit all of it. I mean, the idea, Chai Raichik, probably still working with the left because of the whole globalist thing. You know what I'm talking about?
It's just a real stretch, because calling Tim Pool a reformed or I don't know, Occupy Wall Street was so long ago, 15 years at this point.
People don't even remember that.
I know, but that's how he still is trying to sell himself.
Well, that's how he was sheep dipped as a leftist.
Yeah, which is a tale as old as time. Just talk about ask Dave Rubin. That might be why Tim is so triggered by our coverage of Dave Rubin and felt the need to point out how many videos we've done on this channel.
They should have
it's just he wants that career path to be a little bit more like his.
I think a better sort of angle with the not, you could keep the fact that it was the Marxist FBI and of course the anti-Semitism. You can keep that, but not the Tim Pool should have been corrupting this guy with his like emo devil music. That should have been the sort of like antiquated racism he relied on for, because we already have Marxists in the FBI. This is like, rock and roll, Tim Pool, emo. His music is giving subliminal messages to like make people pretend to be Nazis.
Yeah.
To shoot up schools.
That's a good point.
Or malls.
Speaking of Chaya Raichik, I want to do this clip here too. This has been kind of one we haven't gotten to yet, but the hate monger Chaya Raichik behind the account Libs of TikTok spoke to the aforementioned Elijah Schaffer of Blaze TV, formerly. Elijah Schaffer, we thought at first he was fired for being too racist, but that was a little bit too optimistic. He was fired because of sexual
some
harassment
legal issues going on with sexual
allegations.
Yeah, not looking good.
But Chaya Raichik, no problem talking to him. Her decision to show her face. Well, it was kind of. Matt Binder, like, was that how it happened, or did she end up getting discovered because she was at January 6th and then her face was out there, so she decided, what the hell? That's what happened, right?
Yeah, I think, I don't recall exactly the timeline, but people were finding out more about her and her details and who exactly she was. And then she, some time went by, maybe a couple months, and then she decided to do I think it was an interview with Tucker Carlson, actually, is when she unveiled what she looked like. And then shortly after, people found her out at, her visually out at January 6th, like there in the flesh. I don't know if they had that beforehand and that's what pushed her to show herself, or if she just thought that her information was out there anyway. Enough time had died down that people weren't like actively looking for her anymore. So might as well just get ahead of it and just start making money on the right-wing talker circuit, because right after she got booked for like CPAC and all the shows, she was like doing the whole shebang.
Well, she's aggressively uncharismatic. I mean, this is not her calling, but the hatefulness certainly is.
Also, very funny that I don't know if you guys noticed this. I think the first person who I saw mention it and make it's completely accurate was Alejandra Calabero. She pointed out that Libs of TikTok hadn't tweeted it for like a week or something, and then Seth Dillon, the owner of the Babylon Bee, tweeted out this super passive aggressive thing publicly, like, oh, I can't be the only person who noticed that Libs of TikTok hasn't tweeted in a while. I spoke to Haya and she said everything was okay. We all know this is not normal for her. I hope she's doing all right. And for those of you who don't know, Seth Dillon owns like her LLC, the Libs of TikTok LLC. Like he's the one who monetized it for her. And like he's making money off of her Libs of TikTok career. So clearly he was upset she wasn't tweeting while
chop.
Like, not enough output. Most
sell some merch.
Most
your
editors
LGBTQ harassment quotas this quarter way down.
Yes, we have not had
those numbers.
Not enough threats against LGBTQ teachers across the country. Let's go. Let's keep doxing people. But here she is speaking again to Elijah Schaffer, and she's delusional. She thinks that the term stochastic terrorist was invented to describe her, and she thinks that's a good thing.
And she's, like I said, this is a lunatic.
I'm sad because I thought they made up the stochastic terrorism term, like for me, like
no, they did. They did make it up for. They did make it up for you. No, they did. I'm giving you the credit. I'm saying they accused me of that, but they didn't make up the word. Then they made up the word for you. You are the stochastic terrorist.
They weren't using that term back then.
No, Dora, you woke them up to their full regard. Let me clarify. But they were accusing me of that, but they didn't have a word for it yet. But that's what they accused me of. It was like intellectually inspiring violence. And then you, being a crazy Nazi Jew, allegedly, you're posting recordings of their actual conversations and their own videos gave them the genius phrase to now make a verbal version of violence. Yeah, but I give you the credit. You're inspiring new forms of right-wing hatred. Congratulations.
Can we get confetti again? Okay, thank you. Yeah, they literally made that up for like me, Tucker, and Matt Walsh, and Chris Rufo. Like They made up the term stochastic terrorist for us. So honestly, like, that makes me feel really important. So thank you.
I mean, this is but this is all bullshit because it's not. Like, the term's been around far longer than I knew who. And I mean, I guess I knew who Tucker was, but it wasn't made for those people. Like it was actually about the war in Iraq and how, like, for instance, why George Bush, to the extent that we can credit him with not turning that into a religious holy war, you don't want to emphasize like the religion stuff because then you lead to you keep turning up the temperature on that stuff, and it creates a certain amount of people who are going to say, I'm going to take matters into my own hand.
The first time I remember hearing this term was in reference to Bill O'Reilly with Tiller the baby killer.
Oh, yes, yep.
Bill O'Reilly's hate speech, essentially, and targeting of this abortion provider ended up in his assassination.
Yeah.
That was the first time I remember the term stochastic terrorism. And like, the idea that this woman has been able to catapult herself to some level of fame by essentially just posting random people across the country, gay people, trans people, queer people, lesbians, whoever, and putting their information that they probably just have posted in their little social circle or edited drag brunches out there and just opening people up to hatred and violence, potential violence. And now she's just like, oh my God. Like, I mean, it reminds me of the worst conversations I'd had during like sorority rush. Like, they just invented it about me. I invented this, and that's why you need to join Alpha Phi. And like, I mean, all this is she's just an actual dumbass who tripped into this because she has so much repressed hatred towards herself and other people that now she's enjoying her little moment in the sun, but and glorifying stochastic terrorism, the two of them together, and taking it as a badge of honor. How sick in the head do you have to be? Oh, and last thing too, when he says, oh, you're a Jewish Nazi, ha ha ha. All right, let's do away with that. No one's calling her a Nazi here. Let's just say she is a white supremacist. She's a white supremacist, because that can happen. There are Jewish white supremacists in Israel. Like right now, that's what we're dealing with in terms of the apartheid of the Palestinians. Like that is who she is then. So then there we go. We have that definition out there for you. She's a white supremacist. Sound good?
I mean, ultimately, everything you say is correct. It's just that, like, the most hateful dumbasses are just, rather being a hateful dumbass is just in vogue right now. It's like the hottest thing you can be in the Republican, media sphere is pretending like you have no idea about history or how words work or any of those things. They say like Jewish Nazi, like forget the fact that whether she is or not, like those don't exist. Like there weren't not Jewish people who aligned with the Nazi party.
There was a name specifically for them.
Yeah, act like, it's like when they say like, oh, you like when they have a gay Republican who's incredibly fascistic, and they're like, oh, you think he can be a gay Nazi? It's like all you're revealing is that you have no idea about what the hell you're talking about, and you're relying on like this sort of like common sense. And only common because we don't teach history in this country, and they're trying to make it even hard to teach in this country, that like these things just can't be, in the same person. Like they're inherent contradictions in the way that you understand those terms, but you haven't looked into those terms, and so they just can't exist because you don't know about them. It's a very, it's made it hard to engage online for me recently with how much this has become like the method of arguing for like the most virulent hating, or rather most virulent hate mongers in our society. It's just like, I don't understand anything about the way history or the world or language works, but I should still be platformed as though I'm a genius about these things and, not dismissed. And this,
well, that's the point though, Brandon, right? It's an anti-history project. They want to muddle our history so that it makes it easier for them to implement far-right hateful policies, because then people don't see it as a continuum or as something we need to constantly beat back. It's just a new brand of this. Stochastic terrorist, that was just made up yesterday.
That was made up about me because, I used to love the stochastic book fairs. And so I would always go shopping at them at school.
Those were fun. I mean,
those were fun. You can buy Libs of TikTok book at them now. It's not very good, and so there's a lot left at the end. So, once they throw them into the trash, you can pick them out.
I mean, they do this all the time, right? Like Enrico Tarrio was the head of the Proud Boys. He's not a white man. that is a quite useful construction for far-right people to say that you can't be a part of this ideology if you don't have like the skin color that's traditionally associated with what's going to be or have the identity of somebody. I mean, Milo Yiannopoulos is another example of somebody who would be disenfranchised by and like potentially really, really hurt or killed by the ideology we're espousing. So they usually prop that up because it's a really great way to deflect from what they're actually trying to do.
I just wanted to put this up here also just in terms of the context of what we've been talking about.
Oh, this got me.
In the sense that this is something that Ben Shapiro has been on for a few years, which is that like this is one of those things where you absolutely can say that a person of their own ethnicity or own religious group is actively antagonizing somebody in a way that they wouldn't want to be considered, anti-Semitic. But if you're basically ascribing a purity test to how Jewish a guy like Bernie Sanders is because he stands in solidarity with Palestinians, that's anti-Semitic.
Yeah, here we go.
Any way you slice it.
Thank you, Ben Shapiro, who's consistently saying Bernie Sanders is not a real Jew because he can make that determination, right? That's how he can.
Right, because he practices and because he's Orthodox, that means the secular Jews don't exist. Secular Jews are actively harmful to Judaism. That's a lot of his implication, whether he's talking about Bernie or just secular Jewish people in general.
People who don't think that Palestinians just want to blow shit up, as he spoke about them, and actually deserve dignity and shouldn't be just in an open air prison getting bombed for hours, killing children. She stands with them. Bernie stands with her because Kevin McCarthy stopped her from recognizing the Palestinian displacement, the Nakba, yesterday. God for that means he's not a real Jew. Sorry, Brandon.
Well, I was going to say, and he's much more dangerous than the vocal anti-Semites who Ben Shapiro platforms, like Candace Owens.
Yeah. Who was defending Kanye West.
Hitler. She defends
Yeah, I mean...
Republicans will, in the same sentence, start with, like, Hitler had some good ideas, but the left are the real fascists.
She said that it was because the problem with Nazism was because he wanted to expand in Europe and was not localized to Germany and Austria, essentially, which is psychotic. No, it was the genocide that was the problem. Yeah. The Charaich is a very hateful and sad person.
I mean, it's the slow ebb away in our society of just like basic knowledge about our country, its history, bad and good is just so sad to see. They don't want your kids reading books. They want to remove all the books from schools. They want to remove all the books from colleges. And they want to have Charles Murray and Milo Yiannopoulos and Ben Shapiro come onto college campuses and like challenge children and like, at their cusp of adulthood to debates that they feel like they can win against, again, children who are on the cusp of adulthood. And then they want to, in all of our mainstream publications, platform people like, no offense, like Connor Friedersdorf, who doesn't know anything. And they want to keep they want to keep people as dumb and ignorant about the basic facts of history as possible.
Professional morons, absolutely.
Either liars or morons. They just have them in every step of the way to keep people as dumb as possible. And then on the left, you're forced to like reintroduce people to basic facts, and they look at you like, what? The Moors were in charge of Spain? What? And you're like, yeah, like that's just what happened. It's not even there is no debate
Atlantis.
about this.
Yeah.
they act like why what? You see, like some you hear on Joe Rogan. It's like that's just like in a history book. But I forgot about the Elijah Schaffer's exit from the Blaze and how it was brought to our attention by one Christian Walker. If you remember this series of tweets here. Where a Christian said, let me see here.
I recommend you not come for me, or I'll have to tell your wife how you had sex with my friend at the Turning Points event in 2021 while you were married to her. I don't like cheaters. This loser was fired from his job for sexual assault and then also had banged my friend 4 times in one night at a conservative conference while he was married and she didn't know. Get your family life together before you speak on mine, adulterer.
Got him.
Damn, I forgot about that.
Yeah, honestly, conservatives have a problem within their own ranks. There are not that many of them, but with just the idea of like, actual conservatives with mild principles, like the base of the Republican Party, and it's like, now it's many of its politicians like MTG. It's like, a lot of Republicans are just cultural Republicans. They don't want to be thinking about anything other than the cultural, times under which, they're currently living, like the sports, the trucks, that kind of stuff, and pulling them into a lot of these like very, very esoteric online feuds, but then also like having them be also incredibly hateful is, I think it's ultimately turning people off, but it doesn't matter because they've gerrymandered so much of this country that like simply being unpopular is not enough to lose elections. You have to be like unpopular and someone else has to be more popular in your district, and that more popular person has to have good politics, and in deep red districts that's just not likely to happen.
All right, let's take a call really quick. Calling from a 512 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, good afternoon. This is Lucy from Brooklyn.
Lucy from Brooklyn. What's on your mind?
So last week, Matt had asked the crew if anyone had signed an NDA as part of their contract or their exit. I can tell you confidently multiple times, having worked in fine dining most of my career, that I've had to sign a non-disparagement agreement upon hiring or a non-disclosure upon exit. And it's because the behavior of the ultra-wealthy is so utterly alien and despicable that if it were as widespread, like within the industry, we all know, which is part of the reason why a lot of us have substance abuse issues. But for a lot of folks who are not within the industry, it allows them to have this sort of idea of glamour and propriety associated with these institutions. I'm not going to name any names just for the sake of not antagonizing or alienating any of my, colleagues or former chefs. But I can tell you the behavior of Jordan Neely on the train is very commonplace at a lot of these institutions and clubs. But because they are regulars, but because they are high tippers or, have like high tickets and have, connections within, the entertainment industry, et cetera, we can't really say anything. We can't do anything. We kind of just have to suck it up. And that's just talking about guests. It's not even necessarily including the objectionable behavior, to put it kindly, of the higher up in a lot of these institutions. I mean, there are bottomless scandals that have come out, especially within the wine world, within the Michelin world, within a lot of these award-winning restaurants. Notably, like Spotted Pig, for example, where there's a scandal within the Court of Master Sommeliers where a lot of folks who took their test had to retake them because the boys club within the Master Somm community just gave the answers to each other. And there's no way to tell how many years they've been doing that or how many women that they had actively suppressed in the process of doing that. There's no way to tell, but because it's their own elite club. That said, within the context of like fine dining and, kind of getting your job done, what is happening within Dianne Feinstein's office is so reprehensible to me. Never mind the fact that the literal future of the country is on the line for this. If I had the wrong posture, like the first Michelin restaurant I ever worked at, I would get tapped on the shoulder. This is when I was a food runner, never mind like a foursome or anything. If I had the wrong posture or the wrong grace of movement when dropping off a dish or picking up a dish at a table, I get tapped on the shoulder. And if I got tapped on the shoulder too many times, I got written up and potentially demoted or kept from being promoted within the company. And that's just for something as frivolous as, I don't know, like duck confit and potatoes.
Yeah.
And that was part of my job. And, getting spat at, getting food thrown in my face, seeing trash thrown in, and people pulling pranks on each other within the kitchen where they had hot spoons and would kind of torture each other almost. That was just part of the job. That was just part of and that's just for food. That's just for wine, a completely voluntary act that you can do at home, right? Like all of this is voluntary. You do not need to go and spend $90 on soup. You can make the soup at home and spend $30, but they don't want to do that.
Well, your job is to be a rich person's playground, and they can do whatever they want to you. But if one of the undesirables acts out in public, it's time for execution.
It's time for execution, and when I worked in Tribeca, I'm sure you can imagine.
I got taken to one of those places like a few months ago by a pair of friends that have a lot more money than myself and my partner, and it's very uncomfortable. I mean, to me at least, they're the white gloves, the not looking at you in the eye. I mean, you're not supposed to look anybody in the eye, and then everyone's just supposed to be. And like, I go to the bathroom, the girl's talking to me. I'm like, you're on so much cocaine right now. I mean, that's what that vibe is.
You can smell it.
Yeah.
You can smell the cocaine. Like, you go to the table. Like, there were some nights where I would, when I was still forced, I'm like, I just bartend and do private events now. I can't. It's not worth the stress for me anymore. But there's so many stories. But two really quickly, and then I'll let you go. There's one time I was dropping off wine, and you have to open the bottle at the table and make sure they taste it, make sure it's not corked, etc. And I go to have this woman taste it, and it wasn't even that expensive a bottle, but she's like, "This is utterly tasteless." And you can smell, like, other guests in the vicinity could smell the cocaine on her nose, on her breath. It's like, yeah, of course you can't.
How much cocaine do you have to do for it to be on your breath? That seems.
Well, there's a trick that they do when you don't want powder on your nose, where they just they rub it on your gums, like you rub it on each other's gums.
Right.
Which I think is like really fucking gross, especially while you're eating a meal. But never mind.
But that's not your problem.
No, it's not my. No, it's not my. Like, my problem is making sure that I'm positioned in the right way while pouring this wine, so I don't get written up and lose my job. And like. The last quick thing is, again, at the same place in Tribeca, this VIP was a regular, and, worked in like, high-end real estate. I watched him down 24 oysters and, pate, just like a lot of finger-heavy foods, not even really wiping his hands on his napkin or himself, just kind of just did like a little clapping of his hands, and while he was done. And I actually have my hair in dreads now for this exact reason. Like, when I had my natural fro out, people would always ask to touch my hair, or they would just do it. This guy just downed 24 oysters and pate, like stuff that just is not compatible with, hair roots or hair health. And he just put his fingers in and just kept like rubbing it through. This is so cool. This is so freaking cool. Wow. And I was like, hey, I don't know. I respect you. I love your energy, but hey, could you, I really worked hard on making this look good today. He's like, oh, I'm friends with the owners. Don't worry about it. And when I brought it up with one of the owners and one of the GM at the time, he said, no one is allowed to do that. However, we must be considerate of how much he had to drink, and maybe we put you in a different section next time. And it feeds into my theory. Like, there is a lot of people who want to go out to dinner not for just the food, but because they want to serve for the night. They want to. And that's. There's a lot of people who think that if they spend enough money, well, not even if they spend enough money. If you are a tipped employee and you're in service to them, they have purchased your body for the evening. Yep. Your body, your mind, your everything. And they can speak to you any way that they want to. You see this in lower end restaurants sometimes too, but it's the absolute worst in the upper echelon. And, and those are the same people who the 2 times a year that they're on the subway going from club to club see a man get murdered and think, well, wrong place, wrong time. Anyway, I'll meet you down the street. I'll meet you down, or they'll just change cars. They'll see what's happening and they'll just change cars. They'll walk through the cars and then they'll get off at Broadway Lafayette and continue their partying in Soho. I mean, I'm not, for any industry people who are hearing this, I hope I'm not triggering you, but I also hope, No, we got to jump, Lucy, but I do appreciate the insight.
Fascinating. Anytime you want to call and talk about more behaviors of the obscenely rich, we are here for it.
Yes, please.
Gotta let you go though.
Happy Thursday.
But happy Thursday. Have a good one. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
That's some shit, but not particularly shocking.
What was that movie that came out about the
Triangle of Sadness?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet.
That's what made me think of it. You should watch it.
Yeah. I thought you were lukewarm on it. That's what, like.
I mean, it's.
Maybe I'll download it for the plane tonight.
It's fine. It was enjoyable. I think it's. I was bigger on that than I was on the Glass Onion. People thought that was just amazing. I thought it was okay.
The director of Triangle of Sadness, Ruben Ostlund. People, I haven't seen it, but I'm not sure if you guys have. Some people really enjoy his movie Force Majeure. That's another one that people really like. Similar vibe. He likes to just like.
That's the one Sam just referenced recently.
Oh, was he talking about?
Is that the one where like something happens at the beginning and the guy like basically like he
the ski resort one?
Emergency? Yeah.
Oh yes, exactly. Yes.
You really are becoming one with Sam here. So.
Mind meld.
Brandon, go ahead. Did you want to say something?
Oh no, I was like, that's Force Majeure. It's about the ski resort incident, and then also the menu's good about this too.
That's that movie. I want to watch that one too. Right.
The Menu by the guys who do Succession, I think, or who did the Menu.
That one was.
Nate from Cape Cod said, "Emma, do not watch Triangle of Sadness on the plane or while eating." Well, I did download Tar, which I haven't seen yet, so that's what I'm going to do tonight. Watch on the plane tonight, I think. Salt Lake Lefty.
That's a weird one.
Don't say anything.
It starts very slow, but then it picks up. Give it a chance.
I was actually thinking of The Menu, not Triangle of Sadness.
Okay.
These are all the same movies.
But they're all like rich, critiques of rich people.
Yeah,
right?
it's like Hollywood, making content out of how freakish rich people are.
The Menu was directed by Mark Mylod, who is one of the key people on Succession.
It's like millionaires complaining about billionaires is how
exactly
you can like discuss it. Which I mean, billionaires are obscenely rich. So I guess even if millionaires can even see it, even if they think themselves distinct from that, it's
like the grasping ham meme, but it's millionaires and not millionaires.
Yeah,
take down billionaires.
Salt Lake Lefty, what is the crew's thoughts on Parasite? I mean, I loved Parasite, but
definitely,
good movie.
Yeah,
I think all these movies seem to be kind of ripping them off to a certain degree.
I mean, it's what people like. It's the problem of society, so it needs to find its way into film somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I think I know people have that criticism of Succession. At least for me, clearly, I think they're building to a point about how you literally do not have to be competent at all to be in these roles, and they keep hammering you over with that. I also like the line from Kendall the other, when he was just essentially making up those numbers for his pitch, and he goes, "It's almost enough to make you lose faith in capitalism," but he's saying it non-ironically. I actually think Succession does a good job with it, but maybe I don't know. I'm just really into the story as well. It's like the only television show that's water cooler television left that we have right now. Charlie Sheeher, I worked in food for many years, and the number of customers who think they have a right to abuse people because they paid for a meal is disgusting. I've never worked in a super high-end place, but aside from the cocaine stories, as far as I know, those kinds of horror stories are common.
I mean, this sort of aristocratic helping themselves to the bodies of working people is, I mean, you saw the Dominic Strauss-Kahn rape allegation in France, but, I read William Byrd's diaries, the major slave owner in Virginia in Virginia in the 1700s. And every time he went to Williamsburg, which was the capital at that time, he about one out of 3 trips to do government business because he was on the council. He would talk about how he assaulted the maid at the inn and just had raped her, and it's just and he put that in his effing diary.
No, he's not confessing. He's bragging about it, right?
It's either sometimes he'll be I went a little bit too far and I'm sorry to God for that, right?
Oh.
But it's but other times it's just it's just that's what you do.
Yeah.
And she yelled at me and I recorded this.
Right. RIP the medic, or RIP the medic. The abuse of restaurant employees doesn't get talked about enough. Agreed.
That NDA thing is, I mean, that's fascinating that they make you sign that for that. I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
The real hello Toshi. Hi, EmMajority Report crew. Thanks for another amazing Thursday show. Harkening back to the interview regarding open hog cesspools, I hope everybody listening will reconsider their next purchase of junk food meat. All factory farming has been horrible downstream effects. They are the biggest users of antibiotics. The humans working in them suffer physically and mentally from the work. And we see the industry successfully lobbying to get child labor laws loosened. That part is definitely true. And we don't need to map another animal's nervous system to know their existence is miserable and tortured. So please, on your next road trip, quick lunch, or after party meal, don't support fast food and factory farms the meat comes from. Every time you do, you're co-signing all the above for a moment's satisfaction. I hear you, the real Hello Tushy. I think that you have to be mindful of the fact that a lot of times, like, a fast food meal is the cheapest available option for people who don't have the time nor the funds to pay for certain things that you're describing. So I want that criticism to always have that context.
I mean, it's fair enough to the extent that you shouldn't be eating this sort of meat. I mean, the real thing is we need the state to come in and disallow this sort of
we cannot
meat
rely
farming,
on,
but also subsidize alternatives.
Sorry. Yeah, we cannot rely on people's consumptive choices to challenge this. Adam from Indiana. Wow, Chaya, what a delusional weirdo. Haha, this reminds me of the young Banana Republic dude who thought they meant the store. Those people got to read a book.
I love that guy. At least Banana Republic, they do schedules.
I don't know what that is.
It was the guy who was like, the people are saying this is a Banana Republic, and I say that's unfair to Banana Republic because he thought Banana Republic was talking about the. It
was that Bo Hines,
Bo Hines,
the North Carolina congressional candidate.
Yeah, and he's like that's unfair to Banana Republics. Like most Banana Republics I know open on time.
That's amazing. Landra Cities. Shit, I hit enter too early, but can't stress how dangerous it is to have super isolated nerds having only Punisher dweeb as their window to the outside world. You can't trust your countrymen in the country steeped in firearms. Jesus effing Christ. Ella laughed my ass off. Absolute free speech was a mistake, fam. I hear you. Dan from Missouri, he's absolutely right. Let's reach across the aisle to disband the CIA and other intelligence agencies that may have infiltrated by extreme leftists. I'm willing to make that compromise.
Right, yes, the CIA is too Marxist, abolished.
Yes. Bipartisanship, baby. Kid tested Politburo approved the CIA overthrows countries because they're not Marxist enough. Some real leftist infighting. Jeff from South Jersey. I'm going to be real bummed if we get a Heat Nuggets final. First choice for me would be Lakers, Sixers, or Suns, Celtics. Any combination of those. I don't think the Heat are going to make it past.
Yeah, I wouldn't think it's the Heat. I think it's going to be dope though. Whether the Nuggets, I kind of want Nuggets Sixers battle of the big men.
Yes,
so awesome.
But I think
the two back-to-back MVP
that's right.
winners.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Nuggets will probably wash them.
Well,
really?
I think it's completely contingent on how healthy Embiid is. If Embiid is not at full
that's
strength,
partially why. But
really
I also
hard.
think even if healthy, I think the Nuggets are really good.
That was my pick. They were like the 6th or 7th best odds going into the finals, and I didn't even put a bet on it. Like an idiot, I just said it on ESPN. Why didn't I do it? What's wrong with me? I'm mad at myself for not gambling.
Well, now it's
more.
definitely happening.
Yeah, damn it. I just forgot. Glass Seagull, about the 9-month abortion thing. I've noticed that not many people are able to effectively respond the way Emma and Matt did, reacting to Lance on Tim Pool. You should repeat it more often so that it sinks in with people, because Dems are too extreme is literally the only argument they have left. Fair Dinkum, excited to see the ABC drama version of The Good Santos. Steve CJ, the George Santos docuseries will be the new Tiger King, where we get updates from his jail and how he's going to run for president from prison.
Is Tiger King okay?
All right, 5. What'd you say?
Is Tiger King doing okay?
I don't know. I did not watch part 2.
Joe Exotic? He's still in jail.
I've been like tempted to make Tiger King references, but now I feel like we're getting to the point where we need to make sure he's still like okay. Because
he's still in jail, but I think he was wanting to run for president again.
Okay.
I gotta say, feel vindicated, like, because there's more information coming out about Carol Baskin, like maybe not killing her husband, and it just, the whole thing felt a little.
Baskin killed her husband, stabbed him. That convinced me that it didn't happen.
Wow,
Fed him to tigers, the snack.
How do you know know that by heart.
That TikTok
exhumed. That just exhumed.
I have thought of that
within
TikTok.
me
That's why I got TikTok in the
3 years
first
ago.
place. I can't stop thinking about that TikTok.
Oh well, I've been clearly here.
Baskin.
I remember it. All right, I'm turning on the voicemail, guys. I gotta catch a flight. I'll be out for a week. Well, I'll be back next Thursday. So that's that. Going to California. All right. Edit 1977. At any rate, at the rates SNAP benefits are being taken away, fast food might be the only option for a decent meal. I agree. Gunned out. I was at a Target in Hudson Valley, New York the other day shopping for random things, and someone walked by with a pistol on his hip. He kept reaching for it, and after 10 seconds, I just ducked into a closet aisle and the closest aisle and left. I liken gun legislation to gay marriage in America. Till lawmakers feel personally affected, like their kids being gay, we're not going to get anything done. You think it's a coincidence that Texas finally does something about gun restrictions after a Sunday afternoon shooting in the Dallas suburb? Till enough senators and or Congress people feel endangered, will be actively avoiding gun violence on a minute-to-minute basis. My amendment to that would be that there was no financial incentive or disincentive to allow gay marriage. It was just political. Iowan Ryan, I want to see how to blow up a pipeline. I saw it. It's very good. Also, Midwest Trump supporters are horrible to wait on, especially during COVID. I'll never get over it, especially when the owners are also Trump supporters. Aaron is not cool. Tar starts incredibly slow and meandering. And the final I am of the day. Yada yada. Tiger King is the new Eugene Debs. Got to run a campaign for maximum security. I mean, that could be Trump, too. Yada yada. All right, guys. Appreciate you all. Thanks so much. Binder, Brandon, check out the Discourse, Scam Economy, Doomed, Left Reckoning.
Leftist Mafia tonight, right?
Leftist Mafia tonight.
Oh, what time do you do Leftist Mafia again? Because we got
I'm not on it.
Leftist
I'm not on it. I'm going away. Going to a bachelorette party.
What time is it tonight, Binder?
Well, Leftist Mafia, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said, right? Yeah. Tonight at 8:30 p.m.
There you go.
All right, guys. Appreciate you all. See you.
Bye.
I will see you next week. The rest of you guys, these guys will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light's shining bright. I guess I'm where the choice